Good morning. Well, as you can see, we've another fresh look created by some very talented young artists. Now on ITV and ahead of the interview everyone's talking about, let's join the team for Monday's Good Morning Britain.
And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes, this was very, very clear.
Wow.
Good Morning Britain on the verge of taking her own life. In a deeply revealing and shocking interview, the Duchess of Sussex claims rumour, scrutiny and a lack of support drove her to thoughts of suicide.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Damaging claims of racism. In the explosive interview, Meghan also alleged a member of the royal family raised concerns about how dark their son's skin would be. It's the interview that's sure to shake the very core of the monarchy. This morning we hear Harry and Meghan's honest thoughts on the royal family, and the couple reveal the gender of their second child and the secret wedding no one knew about. Also ahead this morning, schools are back, but are masks and regular tests enough to keep COVID out of the classroom? We'll ask the Children's Minister about that and why frontline healthcare workers are only being given a 1% pay rise.
A dry, fine start to the week, but then turning cloudy, wet and windy. I'll have all the details of that and more coming up on Good Morning Britain.
Monday, 8th of March, 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Charlotte Hawkins.
A very good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock Monday morning. We're with you all the way through until 9. Piers and Susanna will be joining me from 6:30. First, our top story. The Duchess of Sussex says she was left feeling suicidal and, in her own words, just didn't want to be alive anymore after joining the royal family. In one of a string of damning accusations, Meghan said there were also conversations and concerns over how dark Archie's skin would be and whether it would be too brown. She refused to say who the conversation was between, but that it would be damaging if revealed. Prince Harry also took part in the deeply personal interview with Oprah Winfrey and revealed that his father, Prince Charles, had stopped taking his calls at one point. The bombshell broadcast was watched by millions overnight in the United States and will air in full here on ITV this evening at 9 o'clock. Well, in just a moment, we'll speak to our chief correspondent, Richard Gaisford, who's outside Windsor Castle, where the Queen is. But first, to our North America correspondent, Noel Phillips, who's in New York with more on this. Good morning to you, Noel. And, as expected, there were explosive details in this and some deeply, intensely personal revelations at the same time.
It was intimate, Charlotte. Good morning. And it was revealing. It was also unprecedented and dramatic. The fact that Harry and Meghan went into such detail about their private lives and also life inside the walls of Windsor was in some ways very surreal. The reaction so far here in America has been positive. People see Meghan as one of their own, and she's been embraced in a way that Meghan says the royal family failed to embrace her. And you also get a sense from her interview that she is someone who is angry. You get a sense that there is a lot of sadness and a lot of regret. There was also claims, as you mentioned within the interview, where Meghan talked about baby Archie's skin colour. There was conversations being had as to how dark his skin colour would be. There was also conversations about whether or not Archie would be given a royal title. And the fact that these conversations were had and Meghan talked frankly to Oprah Winfrey about these conversations in itself was even more shocking. But I think that is one of the most damning takeaways from the interview. Also, the fact that she suffered with mental health. She struggled, wanted help. And again, the palace, she says, well, people within the palace failed to provide that help. But I think the New York Times, we've been monitoring the reaction here among the tabloids, and the New York Times has described the interview as a bombshell. They've even said that it is in some ways comparable to Princess Diana's interview back in 1995.
I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Raw, revealing and likely to rock the royals. Relaxed and smiling, Harry and Meghan lifted the lid on life inside the firm with shocking results.
There's a conversation with you,
With Harry.
about how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
The Duchess revealed that after what she felt were race-driven tabloid attacks, her mental health seriously suffered.
I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes, this was very, very clear.
While Prince Harry revealed his relationships with his family have been far from smooth sailing since their decision to break away.
When we were in Canada, I had 3 conversations with my grandmother and 2 conversations with my father before he stopped taking my calls.
Meghan revealed that it was actually the Duchess of Cambridge who had upset her before her wedding. A marriage, she also said, had first been carried out in private just 3 days before the public event. This isn't the first explosive royal interview. And though the Duke said he felt his mother would have been saddened by their treatment, she had foreseen it.
Jaw-dropping revelations from the interview of Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan Markle.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle revealed explosive details to Oprah Winfrey.
In the US, the interview immediately hit the headlines, with Martin Luther King's youngest daughter saying it revealed royalty isn't a shield from racism. And inauguration poet Amanda Gorman said the Crown had just maltreated Meghan's light, but missed out on it. Yesterday, the royal family continued business as usual with a televised Westminster Abbey service for Commonwealth Day.
Stirring examples of courage, commitment, and selfless dedication to duty have been demonstrated in every Commonwealth nation and territory.
For the Queen, duty has meant placing the monarchy's survival above all else. But this interview lands a devastating blow that will leave the institution reeling. Noel Phillips, Good Morning Britain.
Well, our chief correspondent Richard Gaisford is in Windsor this morning with more on this. Good morning, Richard. There are some remarkable accusations against the royal family and the institute surrounding them, particularly concerning this claim about Archie's skin colour. Do you think the palace will be forced to respond to this?
Yeah, we understand the Queen was not watching live overnight, but will be briefed at breakfast. And you're right, there are issues that will need to be dealt with in some way, shape or form, specifically that issue about a member of the royal family questioning Prince Harry about Archie's skin colour before he was born. The Queen not criticised at all during this interview, and it is clear that Prince Harry is still very fond, still very respectful of his grandmother, and talked about the warm welcome that Meghan Markle got, surprisingly in his eyes, from the family when she first arrived on the scene, the high levels of support that were received up until that first tour of Australia. And then something changed when she got popular. And from that point on, he said that support just disappeared. So that will have to be dealt with too. Why weren't the royal family, why weren't the household willing to stand up for them when they were getting these headlines in the newspaper, inherent racism, issues that 70 MPs, the couple said, felt worthy of backing them on, but no backing from the family themselves. Clear too that there is a breakdown in the relationship between Prince Harry and his father, Prince Charles, something that royal watchers say will also need to be dealt with.
He said in the interview that during these discussions about them finding a new role for themselves, his father stopped taking calls. I've been told that Harry has been emailing his father as a means of justifying this interview. I can't imagine that the palace are not scrambling together a response, having watched this go out live. We know they will be briefing the Queen this morning.
Well, the interview, of course, prompting conversations and questions about whether Harry and Meghan could ever rejoin the working royal family. It would seem there'd have to be some pretty big changes and some major bridges built for that to happen. One other thing, Charlotte, that came out of this interview that was surprising to me and maybe to others was that actually that big event here back in May 2018, the royal wedding, was not the first time the couple had said "I do" to each other. They said they got married in a personal capacity 3 days before, and questions perhaps too about whether we were all slightly duped by that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Richard, thanks very much for talking us through all of that. There will be more on the highlights and the reaction to that interview coming up throughout the programme. You can watch it yourself tonight. Oprah with Meghan and Harry airs on ITV at 9 p.m. Now, schools across England are reopening today in the first step of the government's roadmap out of lockdown. But all pupils will be asked to take rapid COVID tests and wear face masks. Nick Dixon is at a school in Leicester where they're getting ready to open the gates once more. Good morning to you, Nick. It's going to be all change, isn't it, for families up and down the country as schools fully reopen. What are they doing there about the testing? Because, of course, this is how it's going to be different, isn't it, this time?
Yeah, morning, Charlotte. The long, painful months of homeschooling now finished, and the school gates, as you say, will swing open here, certainly, at 8:15. All very different for the pupils, of course, after months of being at home. There's at Rushmead Academy here, there's 1,800 pupils coming back today. Other parts of the country will be a little different. It'll be staggered to make the testing a little bit easier. But here, certainly, they'll come into these COVID cabins. There's 3 of them set up. The school pupils will take their tests here, their lateral flow tests, and then across on the other side, the staff will be waiting to take in their data, scan the barcodes, and that information will then be fed back to NHS England for around 20,000 pupils going back to school.
The changing room cabins at Rushmead Academy are being turned into COVID test sites for the 1,800 students here. Returning to school will also mean taking rapid tests twice a week. The school says it's trying to reassure parents and pupils.
Everything is being considered to make sure that the school is a nice, safe place, a predictable place, a safe place, which is going to help with student well-being and welcome them back into school.
But as students adjust to the new school day, the Education Secretary is talking of radical changes to help them catch up with their learning, including making school days longer and the summer holidays shorter.
We see this as one of those moments, a little bit like the 1944 Education Reform Act that came out of the Second World War, about how we can be transformative in terms of changing and improving the opportunities for young people.
Labour is calling for breakfast clubs to help children recover and catch up on learning lost during the lockdowns. It comes as a new study shows almost 1 in 3 parents think it'll be a whole year before their children make up what they've missed. As schools across England embark on mass testing, teaching unions say the government should be giving schools better support.
The government's gambling that the rates of transmission aren't going to increase in school and from school out into the community.
57 million lateral flow test kits have been delivered to schools and colleges. The reopening of 20,000 schools marks the first step in Boris Johnson's roadmap out of lockdown. Nick Dixon, Good Morning Britain.
In another change from today, every care home resident will be allowed 1 regular indoor visitor. It is the first step to bringing families back together and giving residents the opportunity to not only see their loved ones, but even hold hands. Although there have not been any strict guidelines given to care homes on how to move forward, Nadra Ahmed from the National Care Association says she's optimistic.
It's a step forward and we've got to move forward. And it's important just to know that this is 1 visitor, but also essential visitors have been earmarked for having access into the service as well. So potentially there could be a few people going into the service now.
In sports, Rangers players, fans and the manager Steven Gerrard celebrated after securing their 55th title in Scotland. The fans broke lockdown rules to party and even took the trouble of sending a plane over their rivals Celtic to taunt them with a message highlighting their success. But there was criticism from First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who said the fans' behaviour could extend the need for lockdown. OK, it's 13 minutes past 6. Let's find out what's happening with the weather now. Laura joins us with all the detail. And I've been seeing these pictures of the iceberg that's broken off, Laura. It looks pretty dramatic. How worrying is this?
Yeah, it's amazing. I saw these pictures across the news as we went through the weekend. It's a huge iceberg. It's called a megaberg. It broke off in Antarctica at the end of last week. It's something that's been monitored for a long time now, so for around about 18 months. And slowly but surely, this crack has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, extending by around about 1 kilometre a day since January. But now we have this huge iceberg. You can see the difference there between the 22nd of February February and the 28th of February. It extended, the crack widened several hundred metres in just a matter of hours. Now, it is big. It's 1,290 kilometres square. That is pretty much the area of Greater London, just a little bit smaller than that. The British Antarctic Survey are based close by, and they caught this amazing footage right along the crack. They've seen 3 major cracks from this iceberg within the last decade. It's something they're monitoring closely because now it is a floating iceberg. It's 150 metres thick, that ice. It is slowly drifting away from the coast, and it could do one of 2 things. It could butt back into the coast, or it could float off into shipping lanes. So this is something they're monitoring closely, but it isn't at the moment something linked to climate change. It is just a natural process, but the images of it breaking off are just incredible. But weather, back down to earth, back to the UK. Things are changing. We've had a lot of dry weather, a lot of sunshine, but that is set to change because the high pressure that's been acting like a force field, keeping the weather fronts at bay, loses its progress because we see weather fronts moving in. It's wet, it's windy. It'll be pretty stormy for some, actually, as we head through the week. Likely to see weather warnings being issued by the Met Office. So the outlook for today is cloudy with rain across northern areas. Some of that rain in the north could turn pretty heavy, but further south, the outlook is largely dry for today. But the outlook, definitely, Charlotte, is wet and windy.
Laura, thanks very much. Well, Good Morning Britain's here all the way through till 9. Piers and Susanna will be here from 6:30. And after Meghan and Harry's sit down with Oprah, I'll be speaking to our correspondent in New York City next to get more of the highlights and more reaction. Plus, as pupils return to class today, we hear how one school will mass test its students. All that to come. First, let's get the news, travel and weather where you are. See you in just a moment. Hello, I'm Sally Biddulph. The husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, the British Iranian woman who has been detained in Iran since 2016, will protest outside the Iranian embassy later this morning. Richard Ratcliffe is calling for his wife's permanent release so she can return home to the UK. That's after she finished serving a 5-year jail term for spying charges, which she has always denied. She faces another court case on Sunday. A survey by ITV London has found 83% of schools think teachers should have been vaccinated ahead of them reopening today. 65% of those surveyed are also worried that a lack of immunisations will lead to staff shortages. The Old Vic Theatre is presenting 2 monologues to mark International Women's Day on its YouTube channel. The productions include Putting a Face On, about domestic abuse, and Aisha, the Black Album, which traces the history of black women's political power. And a world-renowned light artist has opened a tunnel of light installation at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital. The symbol of hope is designed to represent our emergence from lockdown. Travel now on one lane of the M25 is closed clockwise near Romford for emergency repairs from junction 29 to 30. And on the tube, the Bakerloo line is part suspended from Stonebridge Park to Harrow and Willesden. Weather check now with Helen.
Dentec Temporary Tooth Repair Kit sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. Well, the week getting going with plenty of sunshine first thing, albeit a pretty chilly start across the board. There is room for change as the day wears on, especially in northern areas where we've got this thicker veil of cloud, but still likely to stay dry with some brightness throughout. And from here on in, our temperatures on the up. Bye-bye.
We'll see you again in an hour, but back now to Charlotte. Hello again, welcome back. Let's take a look at the front pages of today's newspapers now. And the Daily Mail reporting on the Duchess of Sussex's claim that a member of the royal family asked Harry how dark their unborn child would be. Meghan and Harry's revealing interview aired in the US overnight, and it'll air on ITV tonight in the UK. The Sun reporting on Meghan's revelation that she was on the verge of suicide just before she left the UK with Harry and Archie. And the Express today claims that reports Meghan made the Duchess of Cambridge cry were false, and in fact, the reverse happened. So there's been a lot of fallout from this bombshell interview. Staying with this top story this morning, and during a no-holds-barred interview with Oprah Winfrey, the Duchess of Sussex has revealed she contemplated suicide and that an unnamed member of the royal family raised concerns about how dark Archie's skin colour might be.
And I just didn't I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes. This was very, very clear. Wow. And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There's several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Well, let's go over to our North America correspondent, Noel Phillips, who's in New York. Good morning to you. Now, of course, this aired a few hours ago in the US. People waking up this morning here in the UK just digesting the highlights. What's the reaction been from the US media in particular to these revelations that have occurred in the last few hours?
Well, Charlotte, earlier this week, we saw CBS releasing clips teasing this highly anticipated interview. And the networks here in America have been very supportive of the couple. They've been very supportive of Meghan. In fact, they see Meghan as one of their own. And we've been seeing those clips all week. And the interview did sure deliver. And you get a sense that the networks here are universal in their support for Meghan Markle. They see the royal family as an institution that they admire, but the fact that Meghan Markle has broken ranks and has basically spilled the beans on what life was like inside the royal household, it was shocking. And here's how the networks are reporting the news so far this morning.
And jaw-dropping revelations from the interview of Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan Markle.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle revealed explosive details to Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey's highly anticipated sit-down interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry aired tonight. Markle also revealed disturbing concerns she says were brought up by the royal family about what her children would look like.
Bombshell after bombshell revealed. Buckingham Palace has not yet commented.
You know, there have been deeply revealing revelations, haven't there, about the royal family in particular. I know you've been speaking to people there about their reaction to gauge public opinion on this. What have they been telling you?
Well, all week we've been trying to get a sense of how do people here in America feel about this interview, because we know back in the UK there has been a huge backlash to this interview, and so far the sense that you get from Americans here is that they see Meghan as one of their own. They're really embracing her, and they have really sort of reacted quite badly to the revelation, to the claims that Meghan has been treated in such a way. Also, the British tabloids have been bashed for the way they've been reporting on Meghan and Harry. They see the couple as these two young people who are in love and who are devoted to each other. So what is the big deal? We've been speaking to people here in Times Square as well, and you get a sense that there are people who are now asking the question, why wasn't more done to try and really protect the couple? Why wasn't more done to embrace them and to ensure that they stay within the royal family and try and perhaps modernize and move the royal family forward?
It's just a shame. You did us wrong. Just because the baby is black. I need the people to wake up in 2021.
I would get out of there too if it's about race. You know, when you look at it from the outside, I really don't see nobody my color there besides her. I'm glad she left though. I'm glad she left because that's not the way you want to live. And she's going to be like, she married him. She'll be with him for the rest of her life and she got to deal with that. That's too stressful.
Yeah, Noel, it'd be really interesting, won't it, to see what the reaction is here in the UK and how that might differ from how people saw it in the US. Turning to Oprah now, because there had been speculation that maybe she would go, you know, she would sort of have softer questions to ask, but actually the feeling was that her questioning was a bit more forensic than some had anticipated.
Well, Charlotte, the interview was compelling. Oprah Winfrey, I think, is the star of this interview. Forget Harry and Meghan for a moment, because Oprah Winfrey surely did deliver. She pushed hard and she was persistent. She was consistent also in her questioning and getting some really interesting and compelling details. And I think it's also worth bearing in mind that Oprah Winfrey lives just a few doors away from Harry and Meghan, so there is a personal relationship there. She was also at their wedding back in 2019. And also it's worth bearing in mind that Oprah Winfrey has close ties to the royal family. In 1996, she sat down with the Duchess of York and interviewed her when she announced her divorce from Prince Andrew. So there was a close relation there. And I think it's also worth pointing out that Oprah Winfrey is someone who is a very powerful woman in this country. And she demonstrated that power when she ended the interview this evening by talking about the fact that later on today, which is tomorrow for you guys, there will be a part 2 to this interview. So this is not the end of it. There will be more from Harry and Meghan in the hours to come here in America.
Yeah, more to come. OK, thanks very much. That's Noel Phillips there in New York. And you can watch the interview yourself. Oprah with Meghan and Harry airs tonight on ITV at 9 p.m. We will have more of the highlights and reaction coming up throughout the programme this morning. Now, around 20,000 schools across England will reopen today. Pupils will be asked to take rapid COVID tests and wear masks in the classroom. Nick Dixon is at a school in Leicester now where they've set up testing stations to make this work. Morning to you, Nick. So the return of students is the first step in the roadmap out of lockdown set by the Prime Minister. There'll be a lot of parents up and down the country breathing a sigh of relief, won't there?
Yes, of course, the end of homeschooling. It's going to be an interesting morning here at this particular school because there's 1,800 pupils coming back here. At some schools, Charlotte, it's going to be staggered over the course of the week, but every single pupil is coming back here, and it is going to be a sort of minor military operation in many ways because a lot of the pupils will be coming in here for their voluntary test, their COVID test, in these COVID cabins which have been set up. There are 3 of them in the school for all of the pupils. You can see some of the children already in this morning just finding out what happens and what they need to do when they take their test. Let me just have a quick chat with Dylan. Let me interrupt you for a second. Hi, Dylan. Morning. So how are you feeling about, first of all, coming back to school after being at home for so long?
So I think coming back to school would be good because you can start teaching, well, the teachers can teach and it'll be more interactive. And I think it'll be nice to see friends again.
And how about the test? How do you feel about these tests?
Yeah, the tests are good. I think that it's a good way to know whether you're positive or negative quite quickly.
And you feel safe and secure?
Yeah, it's safe and secure.
OK, let's have a chat with one of Dylan's friends, Ben. Hi, Ben. How do you feel about being back this morning after being at home for so long?
Yeah, I'm feeling good about it, really excited because I can see my friends and soon play sport again, but the face-to-face teaching will help them to elaborate on points if we don't get it. Home learning was good, it was brilliant, but sometimes the work, the teachers can elaborate when they're in school.
Sure. And the tests, are you comfortable having the test as well?
Yeah, I'm really comfortable because I think it's the right thing to do, to know that when you go into a classroom, you know that there's 29 other people who are negative, so it makes you feel safer and more secure in the classroom.
OK, thank you. The head teacher's here as well this morning, keeping an eye on everything. Gulbanu, morning to you.
Morning.
I mentioned earlier it's kind of a military operation to get everyone tested. Is that how it feels this morning?
It does. We started planning and preparing for it as soon as we had the DfE guidance. So it started last week. So some of our students have already had the first test and the second test, but all of our students who gave consent have had the first test done. And now we've got a rota set up. We are ready. The students will be coming out of lessons in the 3 cabins that we've got set up in a chronological order, and we'll be making sure that the students will get tested by the end of the week.
Okay.
So it should be absolutely fine.
I guess for a lot of the pupils as well, they've been away from school so long, it might feel quite anxious for them coming back. Have you got measures in place to help them?
We're expecting a full spectrum of emotions from students who are going to be really excited about coming back to school to those who are feeling anxious. The tutors, the pastoral team has been in continuous contact with the students, so we know what sort of temperature that the students are going to be in, what sort of emotions that they're going to be having. We have got surveys ready for the tutor time so that we can have a look at what support needs to be put into place.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Best of luck today. It is a bit of a calculated risk, I think, for many people. That's certainly how they feel because, of course, it could bring up the infection rate, Charlotte, but it is that first important step back to a sense of normality.
Nick, it's a big day indeed. Good luck to all those who got it ahead. Coming up next, Piers and Susanna will be here with more on that interview from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Stay with us. Here's the weather.
Wow, everyone! It's lightning! Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather, Boxed Boilers.
After a dry weekend of weather with sunshine for many of us, it is all change for the week ahead. It's set to turn cloudier, wetter and windier, and we are likely to see weather warnings in force, something we haven't seen for quite a while now. So as we head through the week, it is wet and windy weather that's set to dominate. Low pressure sweeping in from the west, Atlantic weather fronts battling in. These spread right across the country as we head through the coming days. It's high pressure that's been dominating, keeping weather fronts at bay, and now it relinquishes its grip. We see these weather fronts sweeping in one after another. The isobars tightly packed, showing it's set to be windy as well through this week, and we're likely to see weather warnings being issued. So for this week, like I said, it starts quiet, but it turns very wet and windy. First thing this morning with some clear skies through northern areas. We have got a touch of frost, but a weather front sweeps its way through and a divided start to our day. It's cloudy with rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the far north of England. Further south, it is drier and brighter, but skies slowly cloud over. The best of any sunshine today limited to Wales and the southwest. And it's this rain that is set to win out as we head through the coming weeks. So our 7-day outlook, our weekend is in view. For the north of the UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, pretty much north of the Humber. Average temperature line is around about here, so relatively mild to start the week, turning cooler as we head into the weekend. But look at our weather symbols. Nearly every single day we have rain falling. It comes in different areas. First of all, we've got some showers as we head through the next few days. A drier outlook through Wednesday, but turning much wetter from the middle of the week onwards, and that wet weather lasting into the weekend as well. The fortunes further south for England and Wales. Well, again, average temperature line shows our temperatures are above average for the next few days, turning perhaps a little bit more moderate as we head into the weekend. Percentage chance of rainfall is a real roller coaster ride through the next few days because actually it's relatively dry today. Some decent sunshine. Wednesday, your wettest week, and then the outlook from there remains wet and windy, with warnings being issued for many. For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes, this was very, very clear.
Wow.
Good morning, Britain. On the verge of taking her own life. In a deeply revealing and shocking interview, the Duchess of Sussex claims rumour, scrutiny and a lack of support drove her to thoughts of suicide.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Sensational claims of racism in the explosive interview. Meghan Markle also alleged a member of the royal family raised concerns about how dark their son's skin would be, but didn't name the member of the royal family.
It's the interview which will shake the very core of the monarchy. This morning we hear Harry and Meghan's honest thoughts on the royal family, and the couple reveal the gender of their unborn baby and the secret wedding no one knew about.
Also this morning, schools are back, but are masks and regular tests enough to keep COVID out of the classroom? We'll ask the Children's Minister about that and why frontline healthcare workers are only being given a 1% pay rise.
Monday, 8th of March 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid.
Well, good morning, Britain. Just gone 6:30. Welcome to the programme.
Good luck, everybody, because it's going to be something of a ride.
I've got to say, I'm angry to the point of bawling over today. I'm sickened by what I've just had to watch.
OK, a number of people might be upset.
Sorry, you can come to you can defend it in a minute. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say.
OK.
This is a 2-hour trash-a-thon of our royal family, of the monarchy, of everything the Queen has worked so hard for, and it's all been done as Prince Philip lies in hospital. They trash everybody. They basically make out the entire royal family a bunch of white supremacists by dropping this race bombshell without...
What's that phrase?
They didn't name which one it was. They just throw it out there so it could be any member of the royal family. And Harry says, I'll never say who it was. Well, you better say it fast.
What's the part of the interview that you're referring to?
The bit where they accuse an unnamed member of the royal family. This is the race bombshell that Meghan drops that Harry then talks about. Let's watch.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
And
who is having that conversation with you? Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There's several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you,
with Harry,
about how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
So how does one have that meeting?
That was relayed to me from Harry. Those were conversations that family had with him.
Meghan shared with us that there was a conversation with you about Archie's skin tone. What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable sharing that.
Okay.
It's odd, though, because you were comfortable about sharing everything else in that interview, but you're prepared to let that bombshell just lie completely unanswered so that we now have to think it could be any one of the royal family that was apparently racist about the skin colour of your child. I just don't think that's acceptable. They trash Kate. She's taken down. She apparently made poor Meghan cry.
Well,
she trashes her.
Yeah,
they trash Prince Charles.
That's in response
they trash
to a question
William.
about the
They trash the monarchy, the institution.
that Meghan made
and you know what? We're going to bring in Chris Shipp here. Chris, I got to say, I watched this interview, A, with my jaw dropping like everybody else, but B, with mounting anger, mainly because I could see the way it is already playing in America and around the world. This is a caricature portrait of our monarchy and royal family, which I think is contemptible. I've got to be honest with you.
OK, you said that you wanted your say, and we've let you have your say. Can I just have my say as well on this? They have dropped bombshells, no doubt about it. They have described what they said was an almost unsurvivable experience. They have both said that they felt controlled within the royal family, that they felt trapped, that they felt at risk, that their security was removed. Race, obviously, they claim played a part in that, and they made very serious accusations, as Piers says. But Meghan has, within this interview, said it got so bad that she was suicidal. And I think a lot of people will feel extremely concerned about that. Let's just have a listen to that.
And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes. This was very, very clear.
Wow.
I went to the institution and I said that I needed to go somewhere to get help. I said that I've never felt this way before and I need to go somewhere. And I was told that I couldn't, that it wouldn't be good for the institution.
OK, again, let's have the names. Who did you go to? What did they say to you? I'm sorry, I don't believe a word she says, Meghan Markle.
Well, that's a
I wouldn't believe it if she read me a weather report. And the fact that she's fired up this onslaught against our royal family, I think is contemptible. Chris, you're the impartial royal editor.
It's a shame you're not sitting between us, frankly.
I think I should. Do you want to swap now? Listen, when I put my keyboard down, as it were, at 3 o'clock this morning after I'd stopped watching it live, I was kind of paralysed in my seat for a little bit. There was a lot to take in. I mean, that's an understatement, isn't it? I mean, someone saying that they had suicidal thoughts, I don't think you can say that she was lying at that point. She had these thoughts, pretty serious ones. She took them to HR. Now, look, we talked last week about Buckingham Palace's HR department. What did they do about the victims when this bullying complaint against Meghan was put in? I don't think Buckingham Palace's HR department
her camp
comes out
refused.
very well
hang
at
on.
all.
On that point, Chris, her camp immediately said they can't be believed. Those victims can't be believed. And yet we're supposed to believe everything Meghan Markle now says about her own terrible ordeal of bullying and racism and all the rest of it. You can't have it both ways. We're not allowed to believe the apparent victims of her own bullying, but we have to believe everything she says.
Well, let's take all of these claims and accusations
let's do it one by one.
seriously. There is this claim that she felt suicidal, and I just don't think you can brush over that and say and not take it seriously. For whatever reason, she felt very vulnerable And it seems that when she asked for help, the response was, we can't do that because that wouldn't look good.
Yeah, well, not only that it wouldn't look good, but they said to her, according to Meghan, that we can't help you with your suicidal thoughts. We can see that you're suffering, but the reason we can't help you is because you're not a paid member of the royal family. In other words, if you were a footman or someone in the kitchens, we could do something about it. Because you're a member of the family or the wife of Prince Harry, we couldn't, which I thought was quite extraordinary. Why don't those systems exist? Because, you know, royal family members are only human, and if she's reached that level of stress that she's thinking about taking her own life, where are the systems to look after them? What's in place? And basically, she said there was nothing at all.
And then we have the accusations against the royal family. And particularly this claim of a conversation that Harry had with an unnamed member of the royal family about the skin colour of their children. Now, that is going to be devastating,
It's
isn't
incendiary.
it?
I mean,
Sorry, that claim is going to be devastating in the way it's been depicted in that interview.
Yes.
We don't know the context of that
According
conversation.
to Meghan, but also
we don't
according
know
to
it
Harry
definitely
as well.
happened. I'm not taking anything they said at face value, I'm afraid. I think it's completely self-serving. So let's make it a claim in the same way that everything about them is negative, they portray as nonsense, tabloid, rumour mill and a claim. So let's play the same game with them. Right, fair enough.
Although it's come from their mouth. I mean, you know, a lot
Doesn't
of
make
the
it
claims
true.
in the tabloids
This is
previously
their
didn't come from
truth.
their own mouth.
It doesn't make it true what they're saying, does it?
No, but we have to take seriously what is said in this interview in the same way as we take stories about allegations
Only
of
last
bullying
week, Susanna, we were
seriously.
told we couldn't, by her lawyers,
yes.
we couldn't take seriously
but
the
we
very
don't-
serious claims
but
of bullying by Meghan Markle.
We don't have
Can't
to be
have it both
told
ways.
what to do. We
So we
decide
take seriously
what we
everything.
Take,
All
yeah,
right.
we take claims and allegations very
So
seriously.
we take everything they say seriously, but any claims against her or him we're not allowed to take seriously.
Except we do take those claims
Well,
seriously.
do we?
Yes, we
They
do. We
didn't.
discuss
They
them on the
didn't.
programme.
Their legal
and they
team
are
last
being
week said we weren't allowed to take seriously
But Piers,
claims
that's
of bullying.
for them. We're journalists. We do things differently. We take everything seriously.
Well, thanks for the lecture on journalism.
And interrogate everything.
Yeah.
So
What
let's
would you
take
do if you
these
had
claims
one of
seriously.
the victims of bullying in here right now? Would you tell them that they were lying about their bullying claims?
No,
Or
we would
you
take their
it
claims seriously.
So she was
Exactly
saying
right.
that not only did she have this mental health crisis that led her to suicide, but also that it was a conversation that Harry had with his family members. I should be clear here. I've been told it's not the Queen and not the Duke of Edinburgh.
Well, how do we know
So
which one it is?
that only leaves two family members.
But how do you know that?
Because that's what I've been told.
Yeah, but how does
Okay,
that
well, that's my
person know?
job, is to find out things. That's what I do, and I'm not going to share my
Right, so-
sources with you here.
So now we're left with who? Charles?
Well,
William?
I was about to
Kate?
explain that.
Yes.
So the two people that you're left with is either his father, Prince Charles, or his brother, Prince William, or their wives. I mean, that's pretty serious. That's kind of where it's left. They protected the Queen. The thing is, they protected the Queen throughout this by saying the Queen did nice.
They have an amazing relationship with her. They
Zoom
have
calls
Zoom
with the Queen.
calls.
But equally, they are criticising the institution of which she is head.
They're trashing
and
everything
therefore,
she stands for.
you're criticising his grandmother, the Queen.
And they're saying that Charles and William are trapped. They have no wish to be king, presumably. They're trapped in this terrible institution. An institution the Queen has worked so dutifully and worked so hard to maintain and preserve. The damage to the monarchy here should not be underestimated. I've been watching the reaction in America since this came out. That race allegation in particular, I think this is going to be used as an incredibly damaging stick against the royal family.
It already was last week. I mean, I was watching their equivalent of Loose Women is called The View in America. They'd already formed their view on that programme last week, even just from the couple of clips that we had of Meghan Markle, and were saying that the royal family has a lot to answer for.
Well, Noel Phillips is our correspondent for North America. So you are watching this from the perspective of those in America who, as Chris says, there's almost a sense over there of Meghan is one of us and the royal family has serious questions to answer. What is your perspective?
Well, I think, listen, I was at Harry and Meghan's wedding back in 2019 and I saw firsthand the fairy tale getting underway, them riding along in the carriage, and it was a really joyous moment reporting on their wedding. And to see the position of brand Harry and Meghan and where they are now is quite troubling. The big question that I'm asking myself, having watched that interview, is perhaps, was there a much better way for them to go about addressing their concerns? Is a 90-minute sit-down with Oprah Winfrey the way to go about airing your difficulties that you're having with members within your family? Perhaps not, but there is also a fundamental question. Meghan feels as a black woman, she was mistreated. She didn't feel as though she was given the support. And I think this all comes back down to her background, who she is, who she was, and she just felt she was sidelined and repeatedly overruled in whatever she wanted to do.
Let me ask you this.
Talked about...
No, you were at the royal wedding. I wrote about it too for the Email on Sunday. And she says at one stage in this interview, from the beginning of our relationship, there was this racist media treatment. I just want to show our viewers, to remind everybody, this is a spread of front pages on their engagement and their wedding. You will not see a bigger collection of more euphoric or ecstatic front pages embracing and saluting and celebrating the first biracial addition to the royal family. Ever. I've never seen it. And yet we're now told by Meghan Markle, from the beginning of the relationship, so before all this, there was just over horrible racism aimed at them. Now, I just don't buy that. I'm sorry. There was a lot of criticism after the wedding to do a number of things that then happened.
Well, she said there was a tipping point 6 or 7 months after the wedding.
But this context that there was this systematic media race campaign against them, I just don't think it's true.
Piers, I think fundamentally, perhaps the tone of coverage that Meghan received after the wedding, because again, we look back at those headlines, they were complimentary. We're all wrapping our arms around Meghan and embracing her and welcoming her. She was seen as a breath of fresh air. She was that diverse black woman who was going to modernise the British monarchy. And obviously, months later, or perhaps a year or so later, that all changed. I think what we're seeing Meghan Markle doing is trying to highlight the difficulties, not just in her relationship with the media, but also with an institution that she struggled to really try and get to grips with. I mean, in the interview, she also talked about the fact that she didn't know that she had to courtesy when she meets the Queen, and also she had to go onto Google to to read up about the national anthem. Nobody within the institution was telling her these fundamental basic things. And
Why
I think
wasn't her husband telling her? Sorry, but no. Why wasn't the bloke that she's sleeping with telling her? He's Prince Harry.
It's a weird way of describing it.
Why wasn't he? Well, sorry, I presume they were sleeping together. Why wasn't he telling her that you got to curtsy in front of my granny until 5 minutes before she meets him for the first time? There are so many contradictions in this interview. On the one hand, we're told they're constantly tormented by the vicious tabloid headlines. On the other, they keep telling us they never read any of it. So I'm not quite sure how that works. And we're constantly told that on the money side, the only reason that they did these multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify was to pay for the security.
Which has been withdrawn from them.
It's just complete nonsense.
Well, Chris Shipp,
This
is
is
it complete
disingenuous nonsense?
Because this is an important factor. It's also one of the things that she refers to when she talks about Archie not being made a prince, and she was concerned about protecting him. Let's have a listen.
The idea of the first member of color in this family not being titled in the same way that other grandchildren would be. You know, the other piece of that conversation is there's a convention, I don't know if it's George V or George VI convention, that when you're the grandchild of the monarch, so when Harry's dad becomes king, automatically Archie and our next baby would become prince or princess. Or about while I was pregnant, they said they want to change the convention for Archie. Well, why? Even though I have a lot of clarity on what comes with the titles, good and bad, and from my experience, a lot of pain. And I, again, wouldn't wish pain on my child, but that is their birthright to then make a choice about.
So she hates the title, she hates the pain, even though it's brought her hundreds of millions of dollars, but she still wants a boy to be called Prince, even though that, as I understand it, has never been the convention. This is another load of old flannel, isn't it?
No, because basically the grandchildren of the monarch automatically get HRH title, they automatically get Prince or Princess. So Harry automatically got it because he's the grandchild of the Queen. When Prince Charles becomes king, obviously Archie's going to be a grandchild of the monarch, and he would automatically get it under this current convention.
But Prince William's children are princes and princesses.
Yes, because George is in line to the throne, and the Queen had to actively intervene in order to give it to Charlotte and Louis. For Archie, what Meghan is alleging there, that Buckingham Palace were actively trying to change the rules so that when Prince Charles is king, that Archie isn't a
just
prince.
to punish her child.
Well, she said she alleges it's because of the colour of his skin. That's what she said.
That is incendiary.
It's nonsense.
It's what she said. She said there that it was because of the colour of his skin. She alluded to it quite strongly. That's why they wanted to.
A bunch of racists want Archie not to be a prince in the palace because of the colour of his skin.
She was also concerned that if he doesn't become, if he's not a prince, that he wouldn't receive the same level of security, right?
There was a lot on security in there. Not only when they went, for example, to Canada and Harry had it removed, they had their sort of, taxpayer-funded police protection officers removed basically in last March.
Because they'd given up royal duty, Chris.
Yes, but that didn't stop Harry being in the line of succession and still at risk. So
still a threat. So they were
we
still
had that argument at the time.
So use your own money.
And he has.
He got left tens of millions by his mother. He's been given tens of millions.
The reason he's a target
he's been given
and
tens
is
of
at
millions
risk
by his
is
father.
because of his position in the royal
These
family.
two have been propped up financially by other people throughout their relationship. We know this from the massive amount of money he got left by Diana when she died and by the huge amount of money that Prince Charles has given them.
Prince Charles's money, he said quite clearly in there, stopped in the middle of last year.
Because they gave up royal duty.
He got a fund to sort of relocate him, I suppose, to California. Princess Diana's money. I thought what was quite interesting he said about Princess Diana, he said that he thought his mum could see this coming.
Yes.
And he also said he thought he could feel some of his mum with him during this process.
Well, there's so many echoes of Princess Diana here, not just what he says about he was worried about history repeating itself with his wife, and also he said there was then the added elements of race and social media when it came to Meghan, but also echoes of her interview a couple of decades ago now with Martin Bashir and how she felt isolated within the royal family.
I haven't quite kind of reached a conclusion on this at the moment. Is this worse than Princess Diana's interview with Martin Bashir in 1995? I kind of think it is.
It is.
I think it is.
I think we can all agree it is.
I think
because of what they're accusing them of doing.
I think the fact that she is trying to portray the royal family as a bunch of racists is the most incendiary charge I've seen against the royal family, certainly in my career as a journalist. And it appears to be based on one conversation with an unnamed member of the royal family at the very start when they first got together. We don't know anything about the context.
Well, it was a conversation that Harry had with a very close member of his family, possibly his father or possibly his brother. That was clearly what Meghan said. Harry didn't deny it when he was asked directly by Oprah about it.
It wasn't a conversation
as well.
had with Meghan.
It wasn't a conversation had with Meghan. It was the conversation that Harry relayed to Meghan after he'd spoken to members of his family.
As Ruth on email just messaged us, as a mother of 3 mixed-race children, the colour of their skin was often speculated about, just like you discuss hair or eye colour. Racist? Absolutely not. I think there'll be a lot of people in this country. We are a very multiracial country. There are lots of families in this country who have a white parent and a black parent. You're thinking their families may not at one stage have speculated, so we don't know the context, do we?
You're right.
We don't know whether it was meant malevolently or in a racist context. We don't even know what the conversation was.
We don't know that, but you know how Meghan and Harry took it.
Yes.
Now, that's their interpretation. I don't know exactly what words.
Or are they now
using
using it? Or are they now using it to portray the monarchy as a racist institution? Because that's the way this is playing out around the world. It's incredibly damaging. And Harry's got to come out and say, who said that to you then? Come on. And what did they say? What was the exact wording of what they said? Did they make a racist slur against you or not? And if they did, they shouldn't be fit to be king. So if it's either William or Charles, they're not fit to be king if they did. So let's have the names. Throughout this, they drop everybody else under the bus.
He wouldn't say. I mean, he was asked by Oprah, who was it, what did they say, and he wouldn't go there.
Well, Meghan said at the beginning it was several conversations. Harry made mention of one conversation, that conversation, and said, I am never going to share.
Right.
At the time, it was awkward. I was a bit...
So we have to keep guessing for the rest of our lives that one of our future kings may be a racist. Really? It's disgraceful, honestly. And to do this to the Queen, I'm sorry to mention this again, to do this to the Queen, to trash everything she stands for and the monarchy and the institution and everything she's worked so hard for, as Philip lies in hospital. is contemptible. And I don't care, frankly, of any backlash I get for saying this. It has got to be said. This is their truth. This is not actually their truth. It's a series of unsubstantiated allegations which cut right to the heart of our royal family, which they know it is unlikely our royal family can publicly respond to. Now, interesting, isn't it? Oprah said at the start, nothing is off limits, but not a single question about the way Meghan Markle's treated her own family, and in particular her father.
Although she mentions she has lost her father.
Yeah, but not one question about what went on with her father. Nothing about her family. Harry just lets his wife trash his family on global television.
But they are
portraying them as a bunch of ruthless, bullying, racist... No, sorry.
They're also very positive about the Queen.
Oh,
Say
whilst
they have
trashing
an
everything she stands for.
Relationship with the Queen. They have a Zoom conversation.
Please.
With the Queen.
The Queen's lovely, but we hate everything she stands for. We hate it. It's a bullying, racist, nasty institution that drove us out. Is it hell? That's not why they left. They left because they didn't fancy doing Wet Wednesday royal duty in Stoke. They fancied living in an $11 million California mansion, which is where they're living. They've got everything they wanted. They've got hundreds of millions of dollars. They've got the big mansion. They've got their happy family. They've got their celebrity chums. And yet they're still whining.
Is it possible
it's never enough for these two.
Is it possible to imagine that they felt unsupported within the royal family, that they felt let down, that they felt that the coverage was toxic and unpleasant and had tinges of racism, and that they felt that they couldn't cope within the royal family? Is it possible to understand that?
Is it possible to understand how two such private people who've been suing everyone left, right and centre for the last 2 years over privacy would now give 2 hours of the most gut-wrenching, dirty laundry spewing private information to the world about their family? Oh, it's their truth. No, it's not. It's their hypocrisy. That's what it is. It's their rank hypocrisy. They've spilled more private secrets about the royal family in those 2 hours than I've seen in the last 20 years. I mean, Chris, you're a royal expert. We're talking about the panorama thing, but honestly, my jaw was sitting on the floor with this stuff. This is the stuff that... Imagine if it was your family or mine. I was just trying to think, imagine if you had members of your family on global telly spewing all this stuff out about you.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, my understanding was that no member of the royal family were going to stay up through the night like I did to watch it. But I wonder what the Queen's media breakfast briefing is going to be like this morning, or quite how she's going to receive it.
I think she'll be very hurt.
I can't imagine how
the Queen will be very hurt.
Yeah. It's hurtful
The
to
next
them.
Zoom call they're going to have is going to be a bit more difficult than the previous ones. They're not going to be asking for waffle makers on this Zoom call.
On the day after the Queen addresses the nation about the Commonwealth, which she's incredibly proud of.
Unity and friendship.
Now that Commonwealth is being led to believe she presides over a racist institution. That's the bottom line from this interview.
That doesn't take seriously somebody who felt suicidal and doesn't help them, doesn't reach out to help them with therapy.
Yeah, and also Meghan accused other members of the royal family of lying about them. Effectively, the whole Kate, you know, the whole thing we had before was Meghan made Kate cry. Well, Meghan flipped it on its head yesterday or last night and said it was her that made me cry. And yet the family knew that, she claims, and you know, Kate sent her flowers, she said, and yet no member of the family tried to correct the narrative that was out there.
They
and that
lied
was the kind
to
of
protect
support
other
again and again and again.
Harry actually said we tried to educate them. This is about his father and his brother. We tried to educate them and we tried to protect them, says Meghan. Really? You call this protecting the royal family?
Well,
protecting the monarchy?
Protected,
what a load of sanctimonious guff. Anyway, you may disagree with me. You can watch the whole thing tonight on ITV. We'll be having a lot more clips throughout the programme today. I'm pretty incensed by what I've just seen. I think it's the worst betrayal of our royal family I've ever seen. Maybe
I'm pretty shaken, I have to say, by what I've seen.
Poor old Meghan and Harry, the two biggest victims in the world, in the middle of a global pandemic, as Prince Philip lies in hospital. They're the biggest victims that we know. They're the ones we should feel sorry for as they sleep in their Californian mansion.
You'll hear more from both sides of the story after this. See you in a moment.
It's approaching 7:02. Good morning. It's Monday. You're watching Good Morning Britain live on ITV. And here we are. It's competition time. Take a look from the sky at exactly where I am. This is a beautiful location in the very north part of London that I've travelled to today. And here I am with news of an amazing prize. As you can see, this place is beautiful. Beautiful. And spring has most definitely sprung. There are... Oh, look. Can you see? Look, I've got a little friend here. Can you see him down there? Look. Hello. Yeah, exactly. You're live on the television. I don't know what his name is, but I was going to say something. I thought, no, not appropriate. It was about to do with eggs. Anyway, look, I've got an amazing prize for you, and this is where it starts. It starts with this, a brand new VW camper van. This camper van could be yours. It's worth £69,000, and you can have it parked outside your front door. And of course, staycations are going to be possible very, very soon. Just imagine you'll be able to have a staycation this year and for many years to come. Let me just open the door. Have a look inside there. This could be yours. It sleeps 4 people. It's got a cooker, a fridge, a sink. It's got everything you need. And of course, I'm not just giving away that. I'm also giving away £40,000 in cash. £40,000 in cold, hard cash could be yours. It's a prize worth over £100,000. Somebody's going to be a winner. If you like to enter on the first day of a competition on the telly, well, today is the first day. Here's how you could win big. For your chance to win a camper van and £40,000, go to the website. Entries cost £2. Text WIN to 62525. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or call 09068 782525. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and phone number to BK10, PO Box 7558, Derby, DE1 0NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 2 p.m. on Friday the 26th of March. Good luck. Just imagine you could win this awesome prize and have this VW camper van outside your house and £40,000 in the bank. Now, as I said earlier, spring has most definitely sprung, but it is still quite cold. With all the details, my favourite weather person on television is Laura Tobin.
We predict showers. Warm showers. Do see. Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather. Boxed boilers.
Flattery will get you everywhere, Andy. And for you, for your morning walk that I know you can do every day, I promise sunshine, but it won't last for long and it won't be here all week, because we say hello this week to the jet stream. It is set to spread across the UK. It's a powerful ribbon of air high up in the atmosphere that drives weather systems across our shores, and it is arriving tonight and it stays with us all week long. Very, very powerful, driving weather systems across our shores. So the outlook is wet and windy, a very different looking week ahead compared to the weather we've seen over the last few weeks. This week starts off largely fine and dry, but then it turns wet and windy. So first thing this morning, this is how it looks across the UK. We've got cloudy skies, outbreaks of rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, though, it is largely dry with some decent spells of sunshine. And as we head through the week, this is what we have heading our way: cloudy, wet and windy. Today, though, it's Scotland and northern and eastern areas of England that have the cloudy skies and rain, but further south, it's largely dry. Enjoy it.
For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
Monday, 8th of March, 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid.
Well, Good Morning Britain. This is the interview that's got the whole world going. Meghan and Harry spray gunning Harry's family. Notice she didn't spray gun her own, because they could answer back, of course, but he spray-gunned Harry's family, took them all down, basically, called the royal family a bunch of liars, racists. Very, very, very shocking revelations.
Yeah,
and, like I say, maybe I'm alone on this.
Well,
I think it's deeply unedifying. We will debate this in a moment.
There's also going to be a lot of sympathy for the Duchess of Sussex. You may not feel it.
Do you feel it, really, after that?
Well, she says...
A serious question. You feel genuine sympathy with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry after watching that load of bilge?
Anyone who says that they were left feeling suicidal and didn't want to be alive anymore, you have to feel sympathy for them. Let's talk to Megyn Kelly. She hosts the Megyn Kelly Show podcast. And, Megyn, you came over to cover Harry and Meghan's royal wedding for NBC's morning show today. And that was a time when there was... universal, I'd say, love and admiration for the couple. But they say it all went downhill from there. And, you know, she has made some pretty explosive accusations and allegations. not just about the royal family, but about the impact that it had on them. Will they get sympathy or criticism over in the States, which loves the royal family? What do they feel about the couple?
I think over here it's breaking down by party. The more conservative-leaning people are against them, and the more liberal people are for them and against the monarchy. So it's sort of the same today as it was yesterday. But I'll tell you, just watching it myself, and I was one of the people on the streets rooting for them, delighted that this was happening, right? It was exciting. She was an American. She's a person of color. It looked like the modernization of the British monarchy. The British people adored her. I saw them. I interviewed them. But what I saw tonight was somebody who was totally unself-aware. I mean, completely unaware of how she sounded, right? Like, I wasn't planning on saying anything shocking, except for my husband's racist family almost drove me to suicidal thoughts while I was pregnant with my baby. And by the way, I had no idea what the internet said about Harry. Nobody believes that. And I thought meeting the Queen was going to be just like meeting a celebrity in Los Angeles, like meeting a Kris Jenner, right? Like, nobody believes that. Then she goes on to say, like, I don't believe in any of the grandeur. You know, there's an article already up in the New York Post here in the States saying, this is the person who had Clooney and Oprah at her wedding, even though she didn't even know them, and then covered herself in blood diamonds from the Saudi prince. So, like, spare us that you're not into any of the grandeur. And then while she's spinning this tale about how tough she had it in the castle, how lonely she was in the castle, she's painting herself in sort of these adorations, like, it was incredibly courageous of me to come forward about my depression. And I just love saving things. And it was just peppered with these compliments of herself while she was making these complaints that will be totally unrelatable to 99% of the people out there.
Yeah, you know what, Meg? I couldn't have put that better myself. So, but mainly because it's the level of disingenuousness. And Harry also, you know, to a point, I expected all this from Meghan Markle. I could almost have scripted what she was going to do. Mental health, race, all the hot button things were going to be played against the royal family. There'd be no names. They wouldn't name people on that. They just leave it hanging so we could look at all the royal family and the whole palace staff as a bunch of callous racists. And that's exactly what she did. And I expected all that. And I expected all the layers of hypocrisy. Prince Harry is the one that I'm staggered by. As his grandfather lies in hospital, aged 99, entering his 3rd or 4th week now, clearly been very seriously ill, had a heart procedure a few days ago. The Queen must be worried sick about her husband. And the Queen and Prince Philip have worked so hard for 7 decades now to preserve the monarchy. And in 2 hours, Prince Harry has allowed his wife to trash everything that they stand for. I just don't get what he's thinking.
Well, and meanwhile, her implication that somebody in the royal family objected to her having a baby of color could, I mean, right here on the speculation on Twitter is that it was Prince Philip, right? So I don't know who it was, but while the guy's in the hospital, you might want to put like a corral around him and say, I can tell you it's not the suffering 99-year-old. something, right, to like throw the guy a bone. But the other thing about Harry, Piers, is that his biggest complaint and her biggest complaint was, we were worried about the security. We were worried about the security of our son. Why would they take it away? Why wouldn't they make him a prince? By the way, I care nothing about titles at all. But why wasn't my son a damn prince? Okay, so we're worried about security. And then Harry's saying, all I had was my mother's inheritance. So I looked that up. It's about $15, $16 million. So you're telling the American public, the British public right now, we're supposed to feel sorry for you because you couldn't find a way to pay for your own security when you haven't had to pay for a dime of your own life so far. The British taxpayers have paid for everything.
Exactly.
And now you might have to pay for some
All right,
security.
Even the refurbishment.
Okay,
even
Meghan.
the £2.5 million refurbishment of Frogmore Cottage was paid for by us. They eventually paid it back from their Netflix gazillion.
But they mentioned in their interview that they were subject to death threats. And we know that even if Prince Harry took a step away from the royal family, by dint of his birth, he is always going to be
So hire your own security. If you're not going to do royal duty...
He's going to be at risk.
If you're not
Why
going to do the
wouldn't
royal
you
duty...
expect, because you don't change your birth when you step away from the royal family.
People pay
so
for it
Meghan,
out of your own pocket.
is it not reasonable for them to expect to continue to be protected? Because I think a lot of people will think it is.
Really?
And
they're earning 100 million from Netflix.
I mean, I wouldn't presume to speak for the palace, right, and how the rules are. But I think as a grown adult, you know what the rules are. And when you are a multi-millionaire with all that dough in your pocket, you've never had to pay for anything your entire life, you can shell out a few dollars to protect your child if you're that worried about it. A lot of people have had death threats. I'm sorry to say it's a faction of modern life if you are a famous person. And they're going to have to deal with this. And so far, they seem to be very well ensconced in a very safe place here in California. But if you want your liberty, then you're going to have to pay for it. That's the way life works.
It's really,
it's
not
so
a difficult thing to work out.
To a couple who were clearly at risk. All they were asking for was to be protected.
Oh, please, you're buying into their ludicrously self-serving narratives, Susanna. I'm sorry.
Well, you can describe
They were
it
told
as
when they finally made their
self-serving, or you
big...
can have
When they
some
finally
sympathy
made,
for
we're
it.
leaving Britain, we're leaving the royal family, we won't do any more duty. And they said, OK, well, in that case, I'm afraid the paid security that comes with the job of doing royal duty, that, I'm afraid, goes with the job. And at that point, they throw the toys out of the pram.
So can I just say this? Here's the other thing that really irritated me about the whole thing. I understand they had problems. If there is a racist in the royal family saying stuff like that about their child, it's deeply upsetting. I get it. But nowhere in there did I hear any acknowledgement of the enormous privilege they have, right? Some perspective saying, look, it wasn't a great experience. We chose to leave. That wasn't the way we wanted to live our lives. But we understand there's so much suffering in the world. We've seen it firsthand this past year in both of our countries. And we're good. We're grateful for the blessings we have. We're not here to complain. Love our family.
Meghan Markle actually compared being trapped inside the palace as to what people are going through in pandemic lockdown. She literally wanted people who are living on tower blocks in estates with 4 kids homeschooling. She wanted them to know, I know what that feeling's like. I've been in a palace with a bunch of servants.
Yeah, she was very lonely in her palace. And then she compared herself to the Little Mermaid who married a prince and lost her voice. It's like, so it wasn't predictable at all to you that when you moved into the palace, someone else was going to control the press. My 6-year-old daughter knew that before I went off to cover the royal wedding. Everyone knew that.
Yeah, but Meghan, if you felt that somebody that you were working for was lying about you or mistreating you, isn't it reasonable to say that you felt unprotected and that you felt abandoned and that you know, when she says all she wanted to do was go out and have lunch with friends, she hadn't been out for 4 months.
She literally flew to New York for a $500,000 baby shower and flew back on the Clooney jet.
I don't know how anyone can be prepared
Do me a favour.
for what it is like to be
She's
in
having
that
lunch with her friends in New York.
No, okay, so listen. But you guys know as well as I do. Look, the press was vicious toward her. I get it. After they were lovely toward her, and the press can't turn it.
Meghan, hang on.
I'm glad that you acknowledge that.
Before you finish that sentence, let me again just remind people of all the front pages of the terrible British press
around the wedding,
around their engagement and then their wedding later. Unified, absolute ecstasy about the fact that Harry was marrying a biracial woman. Unified.
That's right. So
not a word of dissent. This is what the British press actually published, not what's in their minds or what they read on social media.
But she said there was a change.
That's my truth. They've had their truth. That's my truth.
That's why I don't think you can say it's about race, because if it was about race, they would have been brutal to her from the start. They were over the top in love with her. And then her behavior changed and their coverage changed. But look, this isn't all the fault of the royal family. She became a royal. She married a prince. The press is going to cover you. I mean, even in my much lower station in life as a news anchor, the press is brutal. You get punched in the face rhetorically all the time, and it's awful. And it's a fact of life you have to learn to deal with. It shouldn't drive you to that kind of depression, those kinds of self-lamentations. And the fact that she became suicidal over the fact that the press was nasty, she was stuck in a castle, and there might have been a racist in the royal family, is truly shocking. It's truly shocking.
We don't know any names.
Well, it's
No, she
upsetting.
says she went to the palace about her mental health and got rejected. Who was that person at the palace that rejected her? And what was her husband doing about all this? She says, Harry says there was a racist in the family, spewing racist stuff about his baby. Who was that racist? You can't just spray gun people anonymously and then smear them all. Meghan, you've been brilliant, as always. Thank you for your contribution. Always good to have you on the programme. Thank you very much.
And Oprah with Meghan and Harry airs tonight on ITV.
Trust me, you're going to want to watch it because it's the most explosive real-life episode of The Crown you will ever watch. Still hello, Good Morning Britain. We've got loads of big guests coming up. This will be raging all morning, so stay with us.
Let's get the news, travel and weather, where you are. See you in a minute.
Hello, I'm Sally Biddulph. The husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, the British-Iranian woman who has been detained in Iran since 2016, will protest outside the Iranian embassy later this morning. Richard Ratcliffe is calling for his wife's permanent release so she can return home to the UK. That's after she finished serving a 5-year jail term for spying charges, which she has always denied. She faces another court case on Sunday. A survey by ITV London has found 83% of schools think teachers should have been vaccinated ahead of them reopening today. 65% of those surveyed are also worried that lack of immunisations will lead to staff shortages. The Old Vic Theatre is presenting 2 monologues to mark International Women's Day on its YouTube channel. The productions including Putting a Face On about domestic abuse and Aisha the Black Album, which traces the history of black women's political power. And a world-renowned light artist has opened a tunnel of light installation at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital. The symbol of hope is designed to represent our emergence from lockdown. Travel now on one lane of the M25 is closed clockwise near Romford for emergency repairs. That's between junction 29 and 30. And on the tube, the Bakerloo line is part suspended from Stonebridge Park to Harrow and Wilston. Weather now with Helen.
Dentec Temporary Tooth Repair Kit sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. Well, the week getting going with plenty of sunshine first thing, albeit a pretty chilly start across the board. There is room for change as the day wears on, especially in northern areas where we've got this thicker veil of cloud, but still likely to stay dry with some brightness throughout. And from here on in, our temperatures on the up. Bye-bye.
More from us again after the top of the hour, but back now to Piers and Susanna.
Well, you've seen some of the clips so far. What do you think? The man behind Princess Diana's explosive biography will be on the programme shortly to talk about the comparisons between Meghan and Diana and their 2 explosive interviews. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV. Well, there's plenty to talk about, and the front pages are up to date. The Daily Mail reports on the Duchess of Sussex's claim that a member of the royal family asked Harry how dark the skin of their unborn child would be. Meghan and Harry's revealing interview aired in the US overnight and will be on ITV tonight at 9 p.m.
There are some reports on Meghan Markle's revelation she was on the verge of suicide just before she left the UK with Harry and Archie.
The Express reports that Meghan made the Duchess of Cambridge cry were false, and in fact, the reverse happened.
She claims the reverse is the case. We're joined by the Mirror's Kevin Maguire, by the Mail's Andrew Pearce, by the author, a women's rights activist, Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamu, and a friend of Prince Harry and Victoria Cross hero, Sergeant Johnson Bahari. All right, Shola, you've been waiting patiently. Your reaction to that interview?
Let me give my reaction to you, Piers, OK? I just, every rant you've just given the last hour, it's honestly, you're such a liar and a disgrace.
Yeah, but you're about to do the same thing. I'm giving you the platform. You talk about the interview. You trash me every time you come on. You trash me every time you come on, which is exactly the thing you accuse me of doing.
Let me
If you've got something to say about the interview, say it.
Let me finish. You bring out coverage about Meghan and Harry on their wedding day and the engagement, but conveniently forget to show the coverage before they got engaged, between the engagement and the marriage. So you conveniently forget that Prince Harry, in November 2016, talked about the racist undertones of the media. You conveniently forget all of that to paint this picture that all was rosy and hunky-dory. Nonsense. And then you are lording over the Queen. Listen, by all means, let's applaud the Queen when she does something right. But when she does something wrong, we need to call her out.
What does she do wrong? What does she do wrong?
What kind of grandmother? Let me finish. What kind of grandmother will be so close to her grandson, Harry, but then not use her power and influence as queen to protect them from the racist media coverage? What kind of grandmother will protect her own son, Prince Andrew, from the potential crime of raping a minor, but will do jack all to protect Harry and Meghan? Especially, I have no doubt that she would have heard about the suicidal thoughts and the help and support she needs. And then you sit there hammering on about how the royal institution is not racist. Are you out of your godforsaken mind?
No, you know what? I find what you're saying about the Queen actually disgraceful. I find what you're saying... You're entitled to your opinion, Shola. I find... Sorry, no, I'm allowed to respond to what you've just said.
Is rooted... Listen, you might learn something. The royal family as an institution is rooted in colonialism, white supremacy, and racism. The legacy is right there. So you're now surprised that a comment would have been made by several members of the royal family about how dark Archie's
It's not several members, actually. No, you can't spew lies.
All right. Harry and Meghan.
Are we allowed to engage in any of this?
Let me finish.
Well, you're not stopping.
That Harry and Meghan had the audacity to speak that truth than you should be at the actual outrage of racism.
Right, okay. Am I allowed to respond to this? Am I allowed to respond yet?
You can respond now.
OK. I think what you just said about the Queen is disgusting. I think it's unbelievable. You talk about the behaviour of a 19...
Am I lying when I said that?
Allow me to say what I'm... Allow me to explain.
And the institution is protected.
Allow me to defend our royal family, thank you.
You tell me.
Right, if you stop shouting, I'll answer you. You going to stop shouting?
Or after you stop shouting.
Yeah, let me tell you why I think what you said was disgusting. The Queen is 94 years old, right? Her husband is 99. He's lying in hospital for the 4th week, seriously ill. You talk about how could... Please let me speak, Shola.
Ooh, everybody, come on, let's
please
just
let me
stay
speak.
calm.
Okay, whenever you're finished.
Speedy recovery. But the reality is, you cannot
Shola, I'd like to finish my sentence, please.
Any omissions or conduct
I would like to finish my sentence.
What your family has done that has perpetuated racism.
Okay.
You don't cover it up.
Can I please finish my sentence?
You have to be able to call her out when she's done something wrong.
I'm going to finish my sentence now if you stop shouting at me. Here's the finish of my sentence.
Guys.
You talk about the behaviour of a 94-year-old monarch and you say that she should have done more. What about the behaviour of Harry and Meghan, who are spray gunning his family on global television as Philip lies in hospital? You might laugh. I don't think it's funny. I think it's piling hurt on the Queen, who is already suffering greatly from her husband's illness.
I'm going to respond to that. What I don't think is funny, I'll tell you what I don't think is funny. It's the fact that you are such a disappointment. I wish to God one day you would even surprise me. You constantly use your platform as a wealthy, white privileged man with power and influence to
what a load of nonsense, honestly.
The biggest
what a load of race-baiting nonsense.
And the misogynist attacks on Meghan Markle. And you do it so shamelessly.
We have done more on racial issues on this show than any other show on television.
You're talking...
Shola, you can keep shouting.
Deny that the royal family has any racist undertone or actions against the first biracial person simply because you're in love with the Queen?
No, I think what you're doing now...
You can love the Queen, but you should be able to call out actions done by the royal family when they've got it wrong.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you trash the Queen. Sorry. Just not going to let you do it.
Well,
I'm not going to let you do it. But you've had your say. Let's bring in Johnson Bahari now. I presume you'll let Johnson Bahari talk, will you? He won the Victoria Cross for serving his country. Maybe give him time to speak now. Johnson, welcome to the programme. As you can see, temperatures are running high about this. You won the Victoria Cross serving this country. You're a black man. Is this country racist? You know the royal family well. You've met many of them. Is the royal family racist?
I could only speak from my experience. I personally, my time, been loads of invitation, visiting the royal family, visit in Buckingham Palace, charity engagement with Prince Harry and other members of the royal family. And the way I have been treated up to date by the general public in Britain, I could never say that.
So when you hear that, you hear Meghan Markle in particular characterise the royal family as a racist institution, what is your reaction to that?
My personal reaction is, I don't believe it because I never experienced it. I went to the palace on numerous occasions where the audience is quite diverse. Everyone is happy and, having a good time. And the royal family, for me, personally, I've never seen it, never experienced it.
OK, Johnson, and it's good to hear your perspective. But you would also acknowledge that if somebody who had come into the royal family had an experience that she felt either with the press, had tones of racism, or the way that her son or her children were being spoken about had tones of racism, you would want those allegations to be taken seriously, would you not?
Well, that's in any walks of life. Anything like that, it should be dealt with. But I don't think it should be dealt with in the public.
Shall we have a listen to that part of the interview? Because it clearly is, from our discussions, the most incendiary part of the interview. Let's have a listen.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable sharing that.
Okay.
Johnson, it feels like we need to know more about that conversation and what happened.
Me, again, I don't believe that happened. If it happened and they feel free to talk about it, just bring up the topic, why then they don't explain it? Well, who said it? Where did it happen? I don't believe it.
And what was the context? We don't have the context. There are many families in this country who are biracial, where one parent's white, one parent's black. You don't think that those families have honest, sincere discussions about, what colour the babies may be? Of course those conversations happen. The context is so important here. Was it racially motivated? Was there a slur against Harry about the potential skin colour of his child? And if that is true, then who said such a racist thing? Because if it was someone who may be, for argument's sake, a future king of this country, I want to know. I want to know the name of that person. Let's bring in Kevin Maguire. Kevin, this was by far the most incendiary royal interview we've seen. We'll park Andrew to one side because we've all made our views very clear about Andrew repeatedly in the last 2 years. He absolutely should be interviewed by the FBI under oath about what he knew about the billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And the longer he doesn't, frankly, the more it stinks. And yes, I think he was afforded protection by the royal family, and that is also shameful. But let's talk about Meghan and Harry and this interview and what it achieves and the damage I think it is doing, incalculable damage right now around the world, and particularly in America, to the brand of the monarchy and the image of the monarchy, which, of course, is led by the Queen.
Yeah, well, there's got to be a reckoning now, because you listen to Meghan Markle and Harry Windsor there. They sounded like survivors of a weird royal cult who'd got out and were having therapy with Oprah Winfrey. And, yes, we've got to know more. Who asked him about the skin colour of his child? Was it his brother? Was it his dad? Was it his grandfather? Was it an uncle? Was it an aunt? Who was it? And what was that context? Because that is hugely damaging. You've got to remember that Meghan and Harry were the future faces of the royal family. They were gold dust. They were adored, huge crowds. Everybody cheered them. And it's gone horribly, horribly wrong for both sides. Why has this happened? What does it tell us? One, about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They still like to use those titles because they get the money from it. Let's be honest about it. And then secondly, what does it say in modern Britain about the apex of the upper class, the hereditary monarchy, this family that sits atop? And it is there, and we pay for it because it is supposed to serve the public. Now, can it serve the whole country if it's racist? No, it can't. So we've got to have a day of reckoning.
Andrew, let's talk also about let's talk about some of the other revelations here. It wasn't.
This is the biggest crisis facing the royal family, much bigger than Diana now, because it's under assault.
I agree. I think the damage is incalculable. Andrew, let's talk about some of the other stuff that appeared in this interview, which under normal circumstances would be a huge story. She turns on Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, says that Kate made her cry over the infamous flower girl thing. Let's watch this.
Did you make Kate cry?
No.
So where did that come from? Was there a situation where she might have cried or she could have cried?
No, the reverse happened.
Now, we don't know the truth about that, other than my understanding from my sources is that actually Kate was very upset by that whole thing herself. So it depends who you want to believe here. But Andrew, it goes on. She spray guns everybody, but it's all Harry's family. Nothing about her own dysfunctional family.
Well, and I was astonished that Oprah Winfrey, who's meant to be this formidably brilliant journalist, never ever asked her why she doesn't speak to her father. She doesn't speak to any of her own siblings. None of them were at the wedding except her mother. And she allowed her to make these unsubstantiated allegations without pinning them down. And as for the royal family, the Queen being a racist, can we just remind people, today is Commonwealth Day. The Queen is head of the Commonwealth. That's 52, 53 countries, predominantly Black African, Black Caribbean. She's a huge champion of the Commonwealth. You wouldn't be a huge champion of the Commonwealth if you're out and out racist. And her husband, by the way, Prince Philip, has been an enthusiastic supporter of the Caribbean too, as has Prince Charles. And there was a very moving TV programme on the BBC last night about their support for the Commonwealth. So I find it very difficult to think that the Queen is a racist.
Okay, Kevin, there is an alternative perspective here, which is that Meghan and Harry have got out and they have blown the lid on an institution that is stifling, controlling, has elements of racism in it, lies to protect certain people and not to protect other people, has a contract of fear with the press, which means that the royal family will not step in when there is unpleasant coverage. I mean, you know, there is a split here between how people are reacting to this interview. You either think it's a disgusting slur on the royal family, or you think that the royal family and the press have questions, serious questions to answer.
Yeah, Susanna, it's very polarising, undoubtedly, and many people had a view. We're going to look at this interview with preconceived positions, me included. Then you watch it, and I think it's worse than I thought it would be for Buckingham Palace. They must realise that now. This is worse than they were braced for. And yeah, there are questions for us in the media too. I don't deny that. And look, Meghan Markle could both be a very ruthless social climber and incredibly pushy, and a victim of racism and snobbery. The two are not mutually exclusive. Both could happen. But she's clearly had an absolutely terrible, terrible time. And if, as she says, she's having suicidal thoughts, she's struggling with her mental health, and she is denied help because it might look bad. What does that say about this family, which looks cold and aloof and very uncaring? And Prince Charles not taking his son's calls at one time?
Yeah.
Come on, any
Andrew,
parent.
Let me tell you, Prince Charles has been bankrolling that couple for the last 5 years. Millions and millions and millions of pounds of Charles's money has gone to propping them up. And he only took it away when they quit the royal family, quit royal duty, quit this country, and went and lived in America. And good luck to them. They can do that if they want to, but they still want to use their royal titles to make their gazillions with Netflix and Spotify and the rest of it. But let's not forget, the father he's trashing on national television bankrolled him.
But he accuses Prince Charles of refusing to take his calls. Dr. Shola?
Sorry, what did you say, Susanna?
Sorry, you were just about to say something.
I was just trying to explain that if Prince Charles has done something wrong, Harry should be able to say, this is what is happening. And, you know, Piers and others who, and not just those on this panel, I'm talking about those on Twitter and everywhere else, who just want to paint them out as this money-grabbing, self-entitled, you know, that all they're doing is complain. Clearly, you're not listening. Now, there are going to be many white people who will watch this interview and come away with, that wasn't racist, the fact that someone in the royal family, or there were conversations in the royal family about the color or tone of Archie's skin, listening to Piers saying, oh, that should be normal. This is exactly how racism is normalized.
Don't you misquote? No. I'm sorry.
This is exactly how
Don't you start race baiting again with me.
Kingdom.
No.
And what I'm also saying
Charlotte,
is
you won't get away with that.
Let me finish and then you can talk. What I'm saying is the Queen is not above reproach. She's neither faultless or perfect. So when she does something right, applaud her for it. But if there's something suspect, we need to call up.
You've no idea what the Queen did.
The royal family out.
You've no idea what the Queen did. And from my point of view, I simply raised the point. We don't know the context of this supposed racism about the skin colour of Archie. We don't know the context.
But Piers, that's not what you're saying. That's not true.
That's exactly what I said.
Context, but you immediately sweep away everything they've said, their whole experience as rubbish, as BS, because the royal family is not racist, according to you, because Meghan and Harry cannot be telling the truth, simply because you don't like them.
But Dr. Shola, to be fair, on this programme, we are discussing all aspects.
And you're entitled to your view, Shola, and I'm entitled to mine.
I'm just correcting Piers.
Yeah, you're not correcting me, you're giving your opinion.
But at the same time, he swept everything else under the carpet, under the guise of,
Let's bring in Johnson Bahari. Johnson, your reaction.
I mean, there is one side of the story here. We only seen one side of the story.
Right.
And they make the decision. They didn't want to be part of the royal family anymore. They wanted to be independent. So be independent. But
we've seen both sides
the fact of wanting the cake and eat it, you cannot have both.
Exactly.
And to be honest,
I'm sorry, you're wrong.
Okay. All right, we have to break.
Hang on. For years, we saw the side of the royal family. Today or yesterday was the first time that Harry and Meghan shared their story. So people, please stop talking like you do not know.
Yeah, why did they share their story if they're so private, Shola?
Well, they didn't want 100% privacy.
These people who are so private, spewing their family dirty laundry all over global TV.
Hang on. Okay.
People like you, Piers, will continue to backlash, continue to lie about them, continue to put out untruth.
I don't lie about those two. I see right through them.
Yes, you do.
No,
Piers. You
I
lie
see
about
right
Meghan
through them.
Every single
and you
day
come out and you defend the indefensible, and that's your position.
Did not want to be your friend.
I don't lie about them. I see right through them.
Yes,
and what
you
they
do.
did on national TV
we've all got a perspective
in the last few hours was a disgrace.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll leave it there.
Dr. Shola, Johnson Bahari, Andrew, Kevin,
and the way you
thanks very
trashed
much
the Queen,
indeed.
by the way, was a disgrace.
disgrace.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Lots more still ahead. As you can see, it's going to be a calm morning. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.
No one is faultless and no one is perfect.
I'm perfect.
No, you're not.
We're about to see a warm front moving in, or, in this instance, a warm bottom. Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather, boxed boilers.
Welcome back to Good Morning Britain. It is all changed with the weather this week, thanks to the jet stream. It's that fast-moving ribbon of air high in the atmosphere, and it acts like a conveyor belt, a river in the upper atmosphere, driving weather systems across our shores, and it stays with us all week long. Low pressure to the north, isobars close together, and it shows that it's set to be wet and windy. And that's really the theme of things as we head through this week. A settled start and then turning wetter and windier as we head through the week. But first thing this morning, it's a divided outlook. For northern areas, we've got cloudy skies, outbreaks of rain. Further south, it is largely dry with some sunshine and a fairly chilly start first thing as well. So as we head through the day, we start to see the rainy skies for Scotland and northeast England spreading their way down eastern coast. Further south and west, it is dry and fine with some sunshine, but skies slowly clouding over here. Temperatures today, double digits at best. The best of any sunshine is in the southwest. Make the very most of that because sunshine will be limited as we head through the week because it turns wet and windy for all.
For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.
Well, a lot of reaction coming in from you.
Is there?
A lot of people one side, a lot of people the other side. We'll keep the debate going.
We're going to have a breather now, though. Something completely
You
different.
could win a prize worth over £100,000. Here's Andy with the details.
Oh, Piers, how are you this morning? Everyone's fired up today, and quite rightly, but I know what I'll be doing tonight at 9 o'clock. I know what you should be doing right now, grabbing your phone, because as Piers and Susanna said, I've got an amazing prize. It's worth over £100,000, and it all starts with some cash. £40,000 in cash. I love giving away ITV's money. 40,000. Oh, look at Henny's back. Henny's back. How do you know when we're on television? £40,000 in cash could be yours. And as well as the cash, we're also going to throw in your very own brand new camper van. Now, this is the camper van. Let me quickly show you around inside, and then I'll show you it on VT, as we say. Some videotape, that's what it stands for. Look, it sleeps 4 people. So 2 people sleep down here, and then up here folds down, a bed comes down, and a further 2 people. So you can sleep 4 people. The whole family can go on a little trip, and remember, we'll be able to go on a trip soon. Have a look at the camper van in its glory, how we shot it, so you can see all the little details. Doesn't it look fantastic? It's worth over £69,000, and I would love for you to win that camper van. So if you want to win this camper van, plus all of the money, £40,000 in cash, somebody will win. Today's the first day that you can enter, having seen it on the television, and here are all the details. For your chance to win a camper van and £40,000, go to the website. Entries cost £2. Text WIN to 62525. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or call 09068 782525. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and phone number to BK10, PO Box 7558, Derby, DE1 0NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 2 p.m. on Friday the 26th of March. Good luck. Just imagine you could have an awesome brand new camper van and £40,000. And if you have a slightly dysfunctional family, hey, here we are. We can all fit in that camper van and we can all go on holiday together. Look at those smiles. They really want to go on holiday with me. Right, let's change up the music because I am live here at Micklefield Hall, a lovely wedding venue with lovely surrounds and grounds. And you're watching Good Morning Britain live on ITV.
Well, we're still talking about, obviously, this interview full of revelations about the royal family from that very private couple, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Chris, what I'm talking in particular...
When you say private, they want just to have a little bit more privacy.
Oh, please, Susanna, just spray gun their entire...
Bit more
Harry's
of their
family's
own
just been
voice
spray gunned for 2 hours on global TV.
Them,
they don't want privacy. They want to be able to attack anyone they like with nobody coming back of it.
They feel they've been attacked.
Oh, please.
They feel they've been lied about. They feel they've been controlled.
You don't even believe this stuff as you're saying it.
And they feel like they've been trapped.
OK, let's move to Prince Charles. Chris Shipp's still with us. Chris, there was a moment where Harry revealed that Charles stopped taking his calls. Let's have a listen to this.
When we were in Canada, I had 3 conversations with my grandmother and 2 conversations with my father before he stopped taking my calls.
Your dad stopped taking your calls. Why did he stop taking your calls?
Because I took matters in, by that point, I took matters into my own hands. It was like, I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something for my own mental health, for my wife's.
So, Chris, Charles stopped taking his calls.
Well, listen, this is the accusation that Harry blindsided the Queen. So let's take you back to January of last year, was it, when they announced that they were leaving, OK? Yeah. And the accusation was the Queen knew nothing about it and his father knew nothing about it. Now, what I thought was quite interesting, we've spoken all about what Meghan said, and I still believe, you don't, that we should take this suicide thing very, very seriously indeed. The racism comes down to whether or not you believe one side or another side. But actually, what he's saying here is actually I had 2 conversations with my father. I had 3 conversations with the Queen about our plans to want to leave. So
there was no blindsiding.
When everyone was writing afterwards that the Queen was blindsided by this, what they're saying is absolutely not. And then Prince Charles stopped taking my calls and he said he asked me for it all in writing. And then he goes on to make other accusations about his family are scared of the press.
Can I intervene? Because this goes to the heart of the coverage that they're complaining about.
Yeah.
So he says they had conversations, 5 conversations in all, with his grandmother and with his father, and that it was Prince Charles who stopped the conversations on the telephone.
Yes.
How was it reported at the time?
At the time it was reported, and I distinctly remember getting a phone call about this, that the Queen was surprised by this, and hence all the headlines, the Queen was blindsided. Now, if she's had 3 conversations with Prince Harry about it, and Prince Charles has had 2 conversations with Prince Harry about it, and then he was asked for it in writing, rather suggests that nobody was blindsided.
Well, says Prince Harry.
OK, this says Prince Harry.
Says Prince Harry.
Absolutely.
We don't even know what the content.
But also, he makes a point about both his father and his brother. They said they are trapped in the royal family. They don't get to leave. I have huge compassion for them.
So disloyal. It's so disloyal.
Well, except he says he has compassion for them.
Oh, please, spell the word compassion.
He is saying that
What's
he thinks
compassionate
that
about
that's not
spray gunning
an
the royal family as Prince Philip lies in hospital? Where's their compassion for the Queen and Prince Philip right now?
Why can't you take anything that they're saying seriously?
Because
Why
they have
can't you
no
understand
compassion, these two,
that
other than for themselves.
A couple find it difficult.
All they care about
be in this
is their own misery and woe in their $11 million mansion.
Misery and woe, you definitely would be concerned about it.
They don't know how to spell the word compassion. They've trashed his dad, they've trashed his brother, they've trashed his sister-in-law, they've trashed everything the Queen has worked so hard to maintain with the monarchy. And they're supposed to believe they're compassionate.
They felt they were trashed. They felt they were lied about. She said that she was driven to the verge of taking her own life.
She says that,
They have absolutely, obviously,
and members of her female staff at the palace say they were bullied by Meghan. And when those allegations were made, her team came back and said it was outrageous, dismissed it, didn't take them seriously at all. But we're supposed to take everything she says as absolute gospel.
No,
and we're supposed to give that respect. She showed no respect for the alleged bullying victims that she apparently traumatised. And I've had one account of one of them, and I can tell you, if they start talking, we're going to hear a very different story about the Duke and Duchess of Compassion.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to hear their stories because they've been dismissed out of hand.
No.
By Meghan and Harry.
We have reported
those bully victims,
on those allegations.
Their stories don't count. Only their truth counts.
On those allegations.
It is honestly...
We take them very seriously, and there is an investigation now launched into them.
Chris, you've got a busy day ahead of you, very busy day ahead of you. You've had about an hour's sleep. We greatly appreciate you staying with us. Just finally, what is the reaction from the palace today?
They've got a really difficult job today. I mean, I said a few weeks ago when we first revealed that this was happening, this had the potential to be very uncomfortable for the country in general and for the royal family in particular. Uncomfortable does not begin to describe the allegations that were made in that tour interview last night. They've got a huge job.
The unsubstantiated allegations and the most serious ones with no names attached to them, which I think is cowardly. If you're going to make allegations like this, give us the names. You spray-gunned everybody else by name. So give us the names about the racist, give us the name about who you went to about your mental health, who rejected you out of hand and said you weren't entitled to any help. We need to know who these people were. No good to hide under the cloak of anonymity so that we look at all of them in the same callous, racist way.
The palace and the family normally never complain, never explain. I'm afraid they're not going to be in a position
because these two have never stopped complaining from the moment they got married.
It was unusual last week when they commented on the bullying allegations. That was pretty unusual. I can't see how they couldn't respond somehow today. They've got to. I mean, we already have spoken about the mood in America and how the view is going to be formed over there. This is potentially very damaging.
America is trashing our country and trashing our monarchy now. I've been watching social media with a number of high-profile people coming out using this as the excuse to trash this country. What was Prince Harry thinking? I know you ditched your country, Harry. You ditched us, and now you want to turn the world against us and our royal family? The thing that your grandmother has worked so hard on for 6 decades? You want to just dismiss all that?
It's definitely a very painful interview.
Disgraceful.
It's 8:03. Here's Charlotte with the headlines.
Good morning. And the headlines this morning, the Duchess of Sussex says she was left feeling suicidal and, in her own words, just didn't want to be alive anymore after joining the royal family. In one of a string of damning accusations in a tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey, Meghan said there were conversations and concerns over how dark Archie's skin would be and whether it would be too brown.
This is the inside pages of the New York Times. The headlines speak for themselves. Royals thrown under the bus. The interview was unprecedented and was compelling, even dramatic. But the response here in America is one of support for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry.
Prince Harry also took part in the deeply personal interview and revealed that his father, Prince Charles, had, in his words, stopped taking his calls. Buckingham Palace has not yet responded to claims made in the interview.
Well, it's understood the Queen was not watching live but will be briefed over breakfast, and there will be a swift response needed from the royal family and household over claims that Meghan did not get the support she needed when she felt suicidal. Certainly we have the couple revealing in this interview too that they didn't say I do for the first time here in May 2018 in their big wedding. They'd actually had a private ceremony 3 days beforehand.
And also this morning, schools across England are reopening today in the first step of the government's roadmap out of lockdown. But pupils will be asked to take rapid COVID tests and wear face masks.
Yes, around 20,000 schools reopening this morning, though it'll be a very different experience for pupils coming back in the next half hour around England. They'll be seeing many of these COVID cabins in the playground where they can queue up and get their lateral flow test before going back to the classroom. And at secondary schools as well, many will be asked to wear a face mask. The Prime Minister saying this is the start of a return to a sense of normality.
Well, on this interview, we just also one bombshell.
Well, Richard mentioned it, didn't he? Richard Gaisford just mentioned this in the headlines. The fact that the couple revealed that their huge multi-million-pound wedding...
30 million quid.
Was actually not their marriage. Let's have a look.
3 days before our wedding, we got married. No one knows that, but we called the Archbishop and we just said, look, this spectacle is for the world, but we want our union between us. So, like, the vows that we have framed in our room are just the two of us in our backyard with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and that was the piece that...
Just the three of us.
Just
the three of us.
Just the three of us.
Just a little old house in the back of our garden with the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Do they lay themselves open to accusations that the big wedding was a lie?
I didn't even know you could do this twice in 3 days. I mean, so the vows they exchanged on national TV...
We'll get to Chris in a minute.
...were not real vows, right? Is that what we... So everything we saw was a sham? And by the way, who has the Archbishop of Canterbury in their garden to get married and then claims to be people of the people?
Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury was there twice.
Well, yes. I mean, they called up the Archbishop of Canterbury and they had 2 weddings. So what I tried to find out before I came on here, and I haven't had a chance to do since, is, well, which one was the real wedding? Right. The one that we all watched in Windsor, or the one that they had 3 days
the Archbishop of Canterbury wouldn't have officiated on a fake wedding.
Yeah.
So presumably he did the real wedding and we got sold the scam for 30 million.
You know, and also last night, while they're having that chat over chickens, I missed that actual bit, so I didn't actually find out that news until about an hour after it ended.
I wonder if they eat them.
No, they're rescue chickens. They're not eating them.
Are they eating their eggs?
They're
cruel.
They're not vegans.
They eat their eggs.
So there's nothing cruel about it in their view.
Not if you're a vegan. Very cruel.
They're not vegans.
Won't play well with the vegan community in Santa Barbara, will it?
You
anyway,
can accuse them all sorts
we've got
of
to let
things,
Chris Ship go, but the multiple weddings that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex appear to have had, one of them completely in secret with the Archbishop of Canterbury in their back garden. We should be discussing that, shouldn't we? As well as everything else. Bombshell after bombshell from this privacy-driven couple. The publicity-shy Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
They've never said they're publicity shy. They just do not want the lies
Don't want
told
any
about
negative publicity at all. As long as it's positive and we're all showering them with praise, that's fine. Anyway, lockdown is having a disproportionate impact on girls and many young women taking on extra household chores like cooking and cleaning, leaving them less time to focus on their schoolwork.
That is the finding of the charity which was set up by Sarah Brown, the wife of the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. And Sarah joins us now.
Sarah, you're a calming voice.
We need
many
you.
a storm over the
We need
years.
you.
I've known you 30 years and you've always been a sort of face and voice of serenity. So calm everybody down with a logical, calm, rational response. I know you haven't seen the interview, but you'll have seen all the headlines and heard the debate raging. What's your view of it?
Oh, Susanna and Piers, thanks for making time for me today on International Women's Day. So maybe we'll talk about a little bit more than the interview. I haven't seen it, but just seeing the reports and listening in on some of your discussions this morning, I can see that at no moment is the Queen, behaviour or ways of treating them been called into question at all. So as ever, she remains our Queen and being exactly as we would expect. But there is concerns around the issue of racism, and wherever it's found, those are things we have to tackle. And I hope that as the UK, we've progressed through the pandemic, learning quite a lot more in the last year. And as you say, no one's named in it. But where there's those concerns about racism, then yeah, of course we must
You would have
tackle
hung
them.
around the Royals quite a lot when you were in Downing Street in particular, and when Gordon was Chancellor. Did you ever witness any racism?
Well, I wouldn't say that I hung around there. On a number of occasions, I was very, very privileged to be able to attend certain events and occasions with them. So, no, of course I didn't see anything.
One other thing I want to get to before we get to International Women's Day involves another woman, actually. Carrie Simon's getting a lot of flack for redecorating the flat at number 10. Is it fair? I've got to say, I'm slightly I think they should be allowed, each new Prime Minister should be allowed to do up the flat.
But who pays for it, is the question.
But the question is, who pays for it, and should we be angry about this?
Well, first of all, it brings into question exactly what you're talking about this morning, which is we have a head of state in the Queen. So the Prime Minister is the head of government, which is a working job. And, you've both been into Downing Street. It's a working building. There's a couple of hundred people in there working tirelessly all the time on the business of government. And where the accommodation is perfectly nice flats at the top of the building where, as President Obama famously said, and was certainly the case for Gordon, you have what's called the short commute to work. And all of that, you want it to be a nice place to be there. I was there with very young children. I didn't spend a lot of time on decoration and refurbishment. I think there was a bit of painting done in the hall at one point. But over the years, there's never time to invest in looking after these rather treasured buildings. So if there are ways round it to look at ways to kind of keep up the upkeep without it falling to the taxpayer, they're probably worth exploring. I think they've gone quite an American route with setting up a charity.
Is it the juxtaposition of this story against the fact they're only giving nurses 1% pay rises after the most gruelling year of any nurse's life? Is that the issue, do you think?
There's always a juxtaposition, and I'd be happier talking to you about nurses than I would talking about redecoration, to be honest, Piers.
What do you think? What do you think of the nurses' pay rise?
Well, it's really difficult when we saw promises earlier that they were going to get more money, and to see in the budget that not a lot came through for them. And we've really there's not a person in the United Kingdom who won't have benefited from the work of nurses and other health professionals to keep us all safe this year and to care for those when they're really sick and dying.
Well said. Well, let's get to why you're actually here.
Yes, let's talk about
We appreciate you responding to the news. It was good of you to do that.
Yeah, and obviously they are high-profile women that we're talking about in those questions and those answers. But International Women's Day today, it's also the day that we send our children back to school in England, in the most part. Some children have been educated at school during this pandemic, but millions or hundreds of thousands haven't. Why do you think, as part of your work with your charity, that girls have been particularly disproportionately impacted by the pandemic?
It's interesting. I chair a charity called Their World, and we're essentially a global children's charity. So much of our work is looking at the poorest children around the world and looking for the opportunity to get them back into school and get education, many of them for the first time. What was interesting this time is we did some research with a company called Hall & Partners looking at what the impact was on girls' education in the UK. And what was really shocking for us was to hear that, 2/3 of girls, young women, are undertaking the kind of lion's share of the chores at home, the cooking, the cleaning, the caring. And that has a direct knock-on effect to the amount of time they've been able to spend studying at home. So my concern, thinking of schools going back today and on International Women's Day, is let's think about those girls going back to school, particularly teenage girls, that they may need that bit of extra support for getting back into school, catching up with studies. And we really shouldn't be saying that in 2021, that we've got that discrepancy, but that very much appears to be the case.
I've got to say, I've stumped up. I've been doing a lot more of my famous spaghetti Morganese in this lockdown.
Brilliant.
Piers, I read your book and I noticed that the way you thank your wife Celia in it is for her marvellous cooking during lockdown. Now, I'm sure it's marvellous cooking, but noted.
It is. I do think women end up doing more of the share in these situations. There's no doubt about that. I think that's completely true.
Yeah, and before we let you go, Sarah Brown, I just wonder whether, as somebody who has been in a very high-profile position, married to a very high-profile politician, do you recognise some of Meghan's criticisms of the press and how there is a sort of contract between high-profile people and the press, and that there is a sense of fear for some people behind that?
Look, our British press are notoriously tough on everyone, and they were certainly tough on Gordon and to a lesser extent me during the time that we were in government. We were dealing with a global economic crisis at that time, and there's only so many hours in the day for, doing the right thing versus looking like you're, saying the right thing or whatever it is to get the better coverage. I still think that you've got to work with the media that you've got and get message out. And my job is to talk about International Women's Day and talk about girls at school and talk about the fact that we need to have a government now that invests in education, and as we go forward to a G7, also invests in global education for girls everywhere.
And it's an important message, Sarah Brown.
Very skillfully deflected, as always.
To talk to you this morning.
Welcome.
Good to talk to you, Sarah. Thanks very much indeed.
It's interesting, actually, about
very
that
wise,
whole
smart lady, Sarah Brown.
Things that you do and the way that it looks, because Meghan talked about that specifically. She said there was an obsession about how things looked, and she wanted people to think about how do things feel when you do them.
Yeah. All about compassion, that one.
8:15, let's get the news, travel and weather where you are. We'll see you in just a moment. You know what we feel.
Hello, I'm Sally Biddulph. A survey by ITV London has found 83% of schools think teachers should have been vaccinated ahead of them reopening today. 65% of those surveyed are also worried that a lack of immunisations will lead to staff shortages. And a world-renowned light artist has opened a tunnel of light installation at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital. The symbol of hope is designed to represent our emergence from lockdown and is positioned outside the vaccination hub. Let's look at the travel picture now. And one lane of the M25 is closed clockwise near Romford for emergency repairs. That's between junctions 29 and 30. And on the tube, there are delays on the Bakerloo, Circle, Hammersmith and City and the Metropolitan line. Weather check now with Helen.
Dentec Temporary Tooth Repair Kit sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. Well, we're getting going with plenty of sunshine first thing, albeit a pretty chilly start across the board. There is room for change as the day wears on, especially in northern areas where we've got this thick veil of cloud, but still likely to stay dry with some brightness throughout. And from here on in, our temperatures on the up. Bye-bye.
Always more from us on our website, itv.com/London. But back now to Piers and Susanna.
17 minutes past 8, after the Duchess of Sussex claimed concerns were raised about the colour of her son's skin. We will discuss that next with our panel.
Andrew Morton and Chaka Khan. That's the panel duo you never thought you'd see.
That's Trisha Goddard.
Goddard.
You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV. See you in a moment. Well, Oprah Winfrey gasped in horror as the Duchess of Sussex claimed that a member of the royal family raised concerns about Archie's skin colour before he was born.
Well, the couple refused to name the individual, saying it'd be very damaging to them, so they'd rather damage the entire royal family by not naming them. Let's have a listen.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable sharing that.
Okay.
Well, joining us now, Grammy award-winning singer Chaka Khan, Sunday Times royal correspondent Roya Nikar, Princess Diana's biographer Andrew Morton, and television presenter Trisha
One of the most eclectic panels in the history of live television. So welcome to all of you. Chaka Khan, let me start with you. Your reaction.
Hi, how are you?
Well, first of all, lovely to speak to you again. Interviewed you many years ago at CNN and we had a great time. But this is an extraordinary moment, isn't it, I think, for the British monarchy, and particularly the way it's being portrayed in America. What is your take on this interview?
I have to say that I really understood where she was coming from and what she was going through as well. I went through a lot of the same or very similar circumstances as well in this country and all over the world, really. It's very sad that it had to get to the extreme with her and her husband, where they are fearing for their very lives, you know, and are not in their own country. It's sad, you know.
I mean, that is the overriding feeling many will have. Trisha Goddard, I mean, it is sad, but some of the stuff they've been coming out with in this interview is genuinely explosive and very damaging to the image of the monarchy. And, of course, at the head of the monarchy remains the Queen, whose 99-year-old husband is currently seriously ill in hospital.
Yeah, well, you know what?
The Queen comes back to this quite well. It seems they've been talking over quite a while. But I agree with Chaka. I wasn't shocked, put it that way. I mean, people talk about racism and say, what exact words did someone say? But it's undercurrent. It's always there. A newspaper headline when Harry and Meghan were first together, straight out of confidence. Well, that might not mean anything to you.
Okay, Trisha, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but the sound, we're missing what you're saying, and what you're saying is very important. So we're just going to try and reconnect so that we can make sure that people hear exactly what you're saying. And apologies to the viewers for that. Roya Nikar, you are royal correspondent for the Sunday Times. These accusations made about the royal family are explosive. That Meghan felt controlled, that Prince Harry felt let down by his father, that there is an accusation of racism over the way that their unborn child was treated, questions about his skin colour, and also about whether he would be given the title of prince, accusations that they were abandoned, that their security was not paid for, and that they were therefore at risk. Roya, normally the royal family never explain, never complain, but they are in a position now where there are so many allegations about them that must be taken seriously. How are they responding this morning, and how do you think they should respond?
Well, first things first, Susanna, the Queen will be at Windsor Castle now having breakfast on her own. Of course, Prince Philip is still in hospital, and she is going to be receiving a briefing from her communications secretary on the explosive allegations that have come out of this interview. And my understanding is that Buckingham Palace don't want to rush anything out, any kind of response. They want to take time to consider the allegations. But let's make no bones about it, and you have been talking about it all morning with your other guests, and so has Piers. We have never heard anything like this in any previous royal interview. The things that Harry and Meghan have said, the picture they have painted of an institution, of personal family members, is dynamite. And I think Buckingham Palace are probably right to take their time. What they come out with next, whatever statement comes out from Buckingham Palace, is going to be crucial in the narrative, because the picture that Harry and Meghan have painted, they have effectively said that family members are racist, that Meghan was told she couldn't leave the house and go out for lunch, that she didn't leave the house for more than twice in 4 months, that members of the royal family and staff members ignored her when she said she was suicidal. These are hugely disturbing claims, and Buckingham Palace will need to be very methodical in responding to each and every one of them. And the other thing I would say...
They will, but let's not forget that just a few days ago, when explosive claims emerged about alleged bullying by Meghan Markle that drove young female staff out of the palace, we were immediately told by Meghan Markle's people that none of this should be taken seriously. It should all just be dismissed. Why should we take anything they're saying seriously?
Because we
by
should
the same
take
criteria?
all these allegations
Or is it only
seriously?
if Meghan and Harry are the victims that we're supposed to take it seriously?
I think Buckingham Palace will take these allegations seriously, and I think we will hear from Buckingham Palace on quite a few of these claims, but they will want to take their time. This will be the first time they've heard any of this. The other thing is, we were told at the end of that interview, I watched it last night as it went out, that there is a lot more material, and that Oprah is going to be talking about that on CBS this morning. Buckingham Palace will be bracing themselves for what more is going to come out.
Yeah, and unless, Tricia, you mentioned before, we couldn't really hear you, but I could hear you, talking about the media coverage and so on they were receiving. I just want to remind people again of the front pages when they got engaged and when they got married, which we've got here, I think. This is a montage. You could not get a bigger collection of more ecstatic front pages welcoming the first biracial woman to the royal family. I remember covering the wedding. There was euphoria from the public and the media. And yet she says in the interview, from the beginning of our relationship, the press were racist.
But the point that I think she was making was that headline that said straight out of Compton. Now, that might not mean anything to other people, but to a black person, Shaka, you'd understand this, it is very painful. It's saying you're ghetto, that you're rough. And other people might laugh it off, but remember, if you've lived with this backdrop bubbling away, Piers, if I can, I'd liken it to if you're blind, if you're sight impaired your whole life, somebody might say nasty things to you every so often, but your whole life is affected by where people place things or don't place things, or whether there's a steps or there's a ramp, your accessibility to life, how much opportunity you may or may not have. I don't think she was ready for this at all. And I actually don't think Harry was either. I know from experience, it's very painful for a white partner to see firsthand all these little microaggressions and what have you, and they're shocked. If somebody brings up, yeah, but what colour is your child going to be? And I've been in that situation as well. It is deeply shocking. It might not seem shocking to the person saying it.
Let me jump in on that. We don't know the context of that conversation. We don't know who's supposed to have said it. Can I put to you just a scenario that may have happened? And I wonder whether you find this, you would automatically think this is offensive and racist. If you have two parents, one's white and one's black, as in Meghan's case, and she's pregnant and going to have a baby, is it racist and offensive for a family member to say, oh, what colour might the baby be? I mean, I would imagine in most families that might be a question they think and they might ask, but not in a racist or derogatory manner. Now, tell me if I'm wrong.
Piers, why does it matter what colour a child is? As long as a child is healthy.
It's just it might just be curiosity, Tricia. In other words, it may not have been a malevolent thing to say.
here's another curious thing. People are often, when I've got my hair natural, people are curious about what my hair feels like.
Yeah.
So they'll come up behind me while I'm doing something and run their filthy hands through my hair. It's only curiosity. They might make comment about my feet or talk about me in front of me. It's only curiosity. But day in
any
and
context
day
that
out,
conversation may... We don't know who the conversation was with or the context, but what you're saying is any context in which that kind of conversation happened is automatically racist.
if you are working against a backdrop of non-stop stuff, it doesn't take one straw, you know, only takes one straw to break the camel's back. And what gets me is why is everybody else such an expert about racism against black people? I'm sorry, you know, I'm sorry, Piers, you don't get to call out what is and isn't racism against black people. You can call out all the other stuff. I'll leave you to call out all the other stuff you want, but leave the racism stuff to us.
I think when Meghan Markle calls the royal family a racist institution, it's a very serious allegation.
She doesn't use the phrase racist institution.
Actually, they do. Sorry, they do. They portray the royal family as racist, and it's a very incendiary charge. And I don't think it actually is fair to the royal family to not name the supposed racist. Let's bring in Andrew Morton. Andrew, I don't need to tell you about royal turmoil.
Or royal interviews and the impact that they have.
Yeah, how does this compare to the Diana ongoing saga?
Well, I have to say, my jaw dropped watching that interview, and it is very similar to the Panorama interview 25 years ago that Martin Bashir conducted. The one thing that intrigues me about the whole business of Meghan saying that the baby and the colour of the baby in relation to security and also to whether or not it's been made a prince or a princess is confusing, because it's the Metropolitan Police who decide security. It's the Queen who is the font of all honour. So in a way, Meghan and Harry are accusing the Queen of racism by default, and I find that allegation quite explosive.
I completely agree. This whole thing that she says about how the only reason Archie isn't allowed to be a prince has got nothing to do with royal protocol, but all to do with his potential skin colour. And it will be the Queen that decides that title. That is calling the Queen a racist.
Yeah, the next stage, I think, has got to be that the Metropolitan Police will have to give a reason why Archie wasn't going to be given security.
Well, I think that is again another serious issue that the whole royal family has to deal with, because I feel like why would they not have security when Prince Harry was still at risk, and as Meghan and Harry both say, they had death threats against them. I'm not sure how people can understand that security was taken away from them.
Because they quit royal duty, they quit the country.
Were still the same
they didn't want to do the hard yards on a wet Wednesday in Stoke at an old people's home. They wanted to live in California in luxury and make hundreds of millions out of Netflix. They can pay for their own security. Chaka Khan, this whole issue of...
Never mind me. Never mind me.
No, I mind you. Chaka Khan, though, is a superstar guest. I'd like to give her some airtime.
I was about to ask Chaka Khan a question.
Well, go on, then.
Which is, what is it like when you're as high profile as you are and you receive the sort of coverage that you say you recognise Meghan received? What does that do to you?
Right, well, yeah, no one can talk about what's going on in her mind and heart unless you're standing in her shoes. And that's where it gets really tricky. We're talking about racism here. I'm coming from a country that is very racist. I lived in Britain for over 30 years, and I found some of the same stuff going on that I've seen all over the world. And it's in little bitty ways that are so finely tuned by now that it's almost hard to find. It's hard to call out, you know. I think when the royal family does look into all of her false accusations, that they're going to have to look pretty deep. And I'm only praying, as an American, I'm not a Britisher, but I'm only hoping and praying that they will look into what she is alleging and make it to rights.
Well, I think that's important. It's also important we look into the ongoing allegations about Meghan Markle bullying people, which she's so keen to dismiss, but would actually, from my information, are actually quite serious. Andrew Morton, what would Diana make of this, do you think? I mean, she would not, surely, be enjoying any of this.
No.
Well, I think the irony is she would be enjoying it. It's almost like Diana's getting her revenge from beyond the grave. I mean, remember, she was the trailblazer in this. She put the boot into Prince Charles 20-odd years ago. She talked about wanting to be the queen of people's hearts, and which prompted the Queen herself to get involved in their divorce.
She wouldn't want William and Harry at war. They don't talk at the moment. I know for a fact they're not talking.
No, there's no question at all that she would want William and Harry to reconcile. But remember, she was actually thinking of moving to Malibu.
Yeah.
She was going to buy Julie Andrews' house. So she could have been with, and also Oprah was going to interview her, and then Martin Bashir
There are
swooped
so
in.
many echoes.
So-
Before we
so-
let you go,
so-
Roy and
parallel
Nicholas,
thing.
Roy and Nicholas, you're a royal correspondent. You're very plugged in. You've got great sources. Just tell us about these two weddings, because Meghan and Harry say that the big multi-million-pound wedding, well, it seems to have been a fake. They were already married before that ceremony took place. Do you know what happened? Which one was the real wedding?
Susanna, that was absolute news to me, I have to say. And I think that is one of the points in the interview that I think the public are going to have really interesting reactions for, because we very much felt, you know, that the royal press that were covering it, the British public who was so behind that amazing day, that was their wedding. That was the royal wedding. And that we suddenly were told that, well, that wasn't actually the royal wedding. The royal wedding was 3 days earlier in the back garden at Kensington Palace. It's quite a revelation. I should think Lambeth Palace phones are going to be ringing off their hooks this morning with questions for the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, to answer. I think the only other thing I'd say is this is just a desperately sad family situation. I know Harry says he hopes that time will heal those family bonds. My goodness me, it's going to be a lot harder after this interview.
I think William is going to be absolutely spitting blood about the way Meghan Markle took down his wife on national TV. I think he's going to be seething at the betrayal. And people can dress this up any way they like. This is supposedly the Duke and Duchess of Privacy, spending 2 hours revealing all sorts of unbelievable secrets about their family.
They've never said they want 100%
we're told that Oprah
privacy.
had nothing off limits. Not a question about her own father, her own family. Not one question about why she's disowned all her own family, why none of the family were at the wedding, but in the place of the family was Oprah Winfrey, who she'd met once in her life. Sorry, I'm calling this out for what I see it as, which is somebody who's a ruthless social climber and is now destroying or trying to destroy the image of the monarchy in this country, and I think it's shameful.
I think it's desperately,
everyone's entitled to their
sad.
opinions. Tricia, final question for you. If you tried to invent a show that had all this, you'd reject it as being too outlandish.
Well, you'd call it The Crown.
No, actually, I wouldn't. The name of the show would be Bullying, Piers, and I'm afraid at the moment you'd be the star.
Really? Not Meghan Markle, who drove out a load of female staff with her bullying? Or does it not count?
Piers, listening to you this morning, I'm saddened. You know what I wish for you? I wish for you only really wonderful things. I hope that one of your sons meets a beautiful black woman and gets married to them, and then you will understand.
Actually, I would love that. Why would I have any problem with that? Why does every criticism of these two have to be framed as
You won't
racism?
have a problem with it. You'll have to hear her problems with it.
Yeah, I'd also like to have her bullying investigated properly. The bullying that no one seems to want to take seriously.
Those allegations are being investigated.
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Has
It's been
been
dismissed out of
launched.
hand. Her victims don't count. Anyway, thank you all, especially for the live lecture, Tricia. Appreciate it. Lorraine's here. Lorraine, what do you make of it?
I just think it's really sad. We're seeing a family imploding, and it's really sad. And we're going to have much more reaction to that interview. We've got Paul Burrell giving us his verdict and revealing why Diana actually said no to Oprah. And ahead of Celebrity Bake Off's return, because there are other things happening in the world, Alexander Burke reveals how Paul Hollywood came to her rescue. Loads to come at 9 o'clock.
Excellent.
It's funny how, if you criticise them, Meghan and Harry, it's automatically racist bullying. If they criticise anybody else, it's much misunderstood victims. Do you see the problem here in the way the narratives go?
It's about perspective on what people feel.
No,
and all of these allegations
they are the
have to be
victims,
taken
and anyone
seriously.
who dares criticise them is a bully, and a racist bully now, it would seem. And I find that completely objectionable. I really do. It's not good enough.
8:41. We're back in a moment. You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.
Well, pupils in England are returning to school today after months of home learning.
Longer school days, shorter summer holidays being considered by the government to help students catch up. Let's talk to Vicki Ford, who is the Minister for Children. Very good morning to you, Vicki Ford. Are schools safe today?
Well, absolutely. It's such an exciting day and such a relief for so many children and young people and staff and families. Really, really important day to be bringing children back to school. And obviously, we've put in place those extra measures to help keep COVID out of the classrooms, the measures that include now testing for secondary school pupils and the wearing of face masks for secondary school.
Let's just talk about the testing, because the pupils will get the lateral flow test. It's not compulsory, so I'm not sure how much it does protect those in schools.
So I do think that the vast majority of children and young people, I hope, will be taking these tests. They're for secondary school pupils. And I think that from the teenagers that I speak to, they really understand that this is a measure not just to keep them safe, but to also keep their friends, their family, the school staff.
They might understand it, but if it's not compulsory, it won't work, will it? Because if you have people not being tested who are asymptomatic and positive, there's your problem.
Well, so first of all, we need to recognise that this testing procedure has already been working throughout this term for the children of critical workers and for vulnerable children who've been in schools. So millions of tests have already been taking place. I do expect to see the testing build up over the next couple of weeks, but I would strongly encourage parents to say, do sign your children up for this test. Clearly, if you're over 16, that will be their own decision. But this is the advice that we've been given by the medics, is to take part in this testing because it will.
Do you have a percentage of pupils who need to be tested for you to assure the whole school community that school classrooms are safe?
No, it's just one of the measures that we've been putting in place in order to have that extra safety and to keep COVID out of our classrooms.
Okay, so if only 10%, for instance, get tested, that wouldn't be a problem for you?
So, no, I expect it to be significantly higher than that, and we have seen it as being significantly higher than that.
And what would you hope it would be?
No, so I know that in one of my own secondary schools in my constituency, over 90% of parents have already signed up and given their consent for this. So I do hope that we will see high
OK, well, we're going to find out, aren't we, quite quickly, so the proof will be in the pudding. Can I ask you, did you clap for our nurses last year?
Absolutely, Piers, and you may know that I am married to an NHS doctor. I know how hard they've all been working throughout this pandemic.
If you all clap for them so loudly, why are you now slapping them in the faces with this derisory, shameful 1% pay increase, which with inflation next year will actually be a pay cut?
So Piers, we obviously want to make sure that all of those who work in the public sector are well paid, and we need to make sure, especially, that we support those on the lowest incomes. So the average nurse salary, I think, is around 34,000. We've just put in place a 12% pay rise.
That's at the higher end, as you know. You know, a lot of nurses come in at 24,000. Why are you screwing the nurses? I don't get how the government wins this. You're obviously going to do a U-turn like you did on school meals. You're treating them like dirt. They've had the most difficult year of their entire lives. A lot of them have seen work colleagues killed on the front line in the pandemic. Boris Johnson's own life was saved by nurses and doctors, and his response is a massive two fingers, and the hypocrisy of all of you every Thursday going out, clap, 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 and then now, whack. I find it utterly disgraceful. What's the matter with you all?
So, Piers, obviously, we also need to be incredibly mindful of the many hundreds of thousands of people who've lost their jobs.
Yeah, let's talk about nurses, though. Don't try and play whataboutery. That's down to the Chancellor to sort them out, and he should be sorting them out. Why are you slapping nurses in the face? You know, you're sneaking back in parking fines for them. So the derisory pay rise they get will not even cover the new parking fines they're going to have to pay. Why do we treat our nurses so badly?
Piers, happy International Women's Day. And let me just answer the question. With huge respect for nurses, there will be the pay review, we'll be looking at this. Obviously, many nurses will be on pay progression and will get extra pay. But we also need to remember that we have got a massive economic hit, 10% a drop in our economy, the biggest recession since the Second World War.
We've also spent billions and billions and billions doing, quotes, whatever it takes. We've had Matt Hancock, his pub landlord got 30 million to make PPE he never even made before. I mean, at what point do you allocate money to the right places? You've given out billions on testing systems that don't work, billions for PPE, a lot of which didn't work either, but you begrudge the nurses who've been at the front line of this pandemic, who are overworked, tired, exhausted, and now they feel, well, why did you all come out and clap for us? All you government ministers every Thursday with your photographers lined up. There we are, there's Boris, look. Couldn't be happier for them. But the moment it came to properly reward them, you stiffed them. Why?
Piers, everybody wants to give the best salaries we possibly can
1%.
to everyone in the public sector.
1% to nurses.
Piers, everybody wants to give the best
Why don't you give it to them then?
we possibly can. But we do need to also keep the support that we've been giving for jobs and livelihoods throughout this pandemic. Hundreds of millions of pounds have gone into supporting businesses and jobs and the furlough scheme.
You said your husband's an NHS doctor. Does he agree with what you're doing?
This is why we need to make sure.
You mentioned your husband. Okay, you mentioned your husband, NHS doctor. Does he agree with the 1%?
So, Piers, we need to make sure we go through the pay review discussions.
I heard
and
you.
Look at
Does your husband agree with it as an NHS doctor? You mentioned him, not me.
So we need to make sure, as we are, that those in the public sector on the lowest incomes are getting
Could you not hear me there? I'll ask you one more time.
No, absolutely, Piers. I just am answering your question.
I just wondered if you could hear the question.
What do I think?
The question was what does your husband, NHS doctor, think?
I'm not going to speak for my husband.
Well, you mentioned him. I didn't even know he wasn't an NHS doctor.
So I've just said I've experienced, as an NHS family, the huge work and the pressure that they have all been
pay
under.
them properly then.
And that is why.
If you've experienced it, you should be even more livid about it. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to change it. You're going to give them more. But they'll never forget the fact that when it actually came to the moment of the pandemic where you could actually show they were worth more than a clap, you gave them a slap. And we all know that's going to happen. You're going to give them more money, and yet you will have left them with the impression you didn't value them. And I find that unconscionable in the year that these nurses have had. I really do.
So Piers, as I've said, we need to make sure that we can give the best possible pay rises to the public sector, but everybody is going to need to work to pay the debt that we've taken on during this pandemic.
Yeah, what about the debt you owe the nurses? It's the debt you owe the nurses I care about. Anyway, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to the U-turn that is inevitably coming, but never forget that when you had the chance to reward them, you stiffed them. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
We've already put significant increases in, as you know.
You don't even believe this as you're telling me it, do you? You don't believe it. You don't agree with this, and I bet your husband doesn't either.
OK, we have to leave it there.
Thank you, and thank you for celebrating the return of our children to schools, which is such.
And thank you for celebrating International Women's Day, where you stiffed a load of women in the NHS. Good Morning Britain is back tomorrow from 6. Now it's time to join Lorraine.